that'd be tough.
He's good like that.
And then you said just
Dinner always around.
He's always good like that.
Everybody in the family. Or
Yeah, thoroughly. I mean, when we were younger, did you around? He was that close. Baseball. But, I mean, he was doing this. He had seemingly a different meeting every night.
so it's like having a live discussion.
No, that was other times, not necessarily as dinner. That was in the car on the way to our house. 6 o'clock in the morning.
Hopefully they'll release the funds and they'll buy what you want.
Let my family.
So I feel like I sent them all the love that people send on my Facebook, so I kept sending them all the nice things they're saying. But then I don't want to be a pain either. So but he said thank you, appreciate it. So I said, you just tell us, we'll do it again. So it's like a balance of like, you know.
Are we ready?
How are you? What time is it? It's 7 o'clock, I'm done. Good job.
Can we stand for the salute to the flag, please?
Over here.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So before we start, I just want to say that I would like to take a moment to have a moment of silence for Ms. Kayela Colon, who we lost this last month. So if we can just have a moment of silence, please.
Amen.
So I would like to advise those present that the notice of this regular meeting of the Housing Authority of the City of Hoboken has been provided to the public in accordance with provisions of the Open Public Meetings Act. Notice to this meeting of Thursday, September 8, 2022 was given by publication of the annual meeting notice of the authority, with amendments as necessary, was sent to the Jersey Journal and Star Ledger on Tuesday, August 30th, 2022, was sent to the City Clerk of Hoboken on Tuesday, August 30, 2022, with a copy of the agenda to be posted on the bulletin board in the City Hall, Hoboken Library, and Hoboken Police Department, and was posted on the authority website on Tuesday, August 30th, 2022. I direct the minutes of this meeting to state that I have announced that adequate notice of this meeting has been given as required by the Open Public Meetings Act. So, we're going to start with the public portion. Roll call, Director.
Anthony Forbes, Andrew Impastato,
Here.
Aaron Lewitt, here. Barbara Reyes,
Here.
Michael Russo,
Here.
James Sanford,
Here.
Erica Seitzman.
Here. And we will now begin with our public portion. Is anybody signed up? I just want to remind everyone that comes up to speak, you can direct your questions or whatever you're going to speak about directly to myself. We will then, if it's something that needs to be further discussed with the director, we will then do that. I just ask everyone to be respectful of the commissioners, the staff, and everyone here. Thank you. Mark Villamar.
Good evening, Madam Chair. Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Mark Luis Villamar. I'm the Finance Officer of the Hoboken American Legion Post, located just a couple blocks from here. Like many parts of Hoboken, in October 2012, Superstorm Sandy damaged, in fact, practically destroyed our initial post that had one story, and pretty much everything in it was totaled, including all our memorabilia, all our records, all everything in the building got flooded. The city came to recognize that there was an opportunity here for the post to rebuild itself and at the same time create housing for homeless veterans, because the city had a parking lot just on the corner of Willow and 2nd, which was adjacent to our post, and what we decided to do was to embark on a program to rebuild a new post out of the flood zone and create 24 units of housing. Through the efforts of the Hoboken Housing Authority at the time, we were able to secure 6 vouchers. Only 6, we applied for 24 on an RFP, but we took those 6 and said, let's break this project into 2 parts. We'll have a phase 1, we'll build the main building, get 6 people off the streets, and we did that. We completed the building about 3 years ago, and there are now 6 residents that had previously been on the streets. And there have been no trouble with them. We've had absolutely no trouble in terms of our ability to work with the neighborhood and integrate these people back into society. In one case, we had one of the residents, we were able to secure a job with him, for him with the City of Hoboken. And that's what the American Legion is pledged to do. Our mission, our 102-year-old post, our mission is to assist veterans and their families. And we're now, for the last 2 years, been working somewhat closely with your executive director to secure another 18 vouchers. And that's why I'm here today, to tell you a little bit about our second phase of the project, which would expand the post facilities to include meeting rooms and exercise rooms and ability to engage the veteran administration to provide all the kind of services that people previously homeless need. Sometimes it's substance abuse. In the case of veterans, it could be PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder. It could be any number of issues related to their service for our country. These 18 people will be selected not by the American Legion. We have an agency that does that for us, and we just basically require that they have a honorable discharge from any branch of the military service. And with the understanding that as many things in Hoboken, many things in this country originate in Hoboken, baseball being probably the most famous, our post is the first post in the United States that had, on the same location, a post and housing for homeless veterans. And we're now a model throughout the state. There are 4 other communities that are doing this, closely connected to us. But we can't even get started without a commitment for project-based vouchers. You all know about what vouchers are and how to get them. I am here today to seek your assistance to get these vouchers so that we can fund the rest of the building, get them constructed, and get 18 more veterans' homes. Director Recco and I are going to meet and try to work something that will engage the elected community, the elected officials in our community to assist us and to eventually have an expansion of our building. And if anyone has any questions about what I'm doing and how we can work together, I'd be happy to entertain them. And I'd also like to invite you all to visit what we have built. If you haven't been there yet, you should see. We have an amazing post. And anybody in the Housing Authority residents that are veterans and are interested in working with other veterans in this community, I really urge you to send them our way, because we have a wonderful post. It's very vital now. We have a lot of younger members. I'm a Vietnam veteran, but we're on the way out. There's a lot of guys coming in now that are much younger than I am. And it's a very interesting facility. And anybody who'd like to see it, Director Recco obviously has my email, and I'd be happy to walk you through it. Thank you so much for all you do for the people in the Housing Authority.
Thank you. Carmen Vega.
Good evening, everyone. I'm just here to take out a moment just to say thank you for Hoboken Housing, that they've been excellent in trying to provide services to their ability for all the tenants. They're trying their best. I also want to take out this moment to thank Councilman Phil Cohens for the tremendous summer that we have had this summer in Fox Hill. He's been very excellent in servicing the seniors / disabled people in our building. And the reason I want to emphasize this is because the previous person that we had, that many of you know, never did anything for Fox Hill. So we have to give credit where credit is due. And he has done a tremendous job up till now. I also want to thank Ruben, because Ruben Ramos has been there for years for us. And every time there's a bus ride down here, I tiptoe down here and I get on it. So I'm very grateful for that. Also, and Councilman Ruben, if anyone needs him, he's there. That's a true fact. And Mr. Recco, I know that you have come a long way, and unfortunately, because of the pandemic, we had some issues that had to be on hold, but we're trying to be as patient as we can. I know there's a lot of fixtures that have to be done in Fox Hill, and it's understandable, but we have to try to, get the repairs done, that's all. I think that's, once that's done, we'll be on a smoother road with everyone there, I hope. Anyway, but I want to thank you for you and your staff. I must say that the girls in Fox Hill, they're awesome. They're here, Navi's here, some of them are here. So I just want you to know that you do have a great team up there. And just in general, everyone that we reach out to, if we need help, they're always there for us. So they don't hesitate to not help. If we need it, they're there, whatever it may be. So you have a great team, and they're trying to do their best that they can with whatever they can do. So it's understandable. So I want to say that. I just wanted to take out that moment. And also the security, it seems to me like these couple of days, it's only been not even a month, but it seems like it's working out. So I hope that it continues to keep out the people that we don't need in our building. Bob, I know you for many years, and I'm glad that you're there where you're at right now, because you know what we all been through, and the struggle has been real. So also I want to take out the opportunity to thank every commissioner that sits here in front of us and hears our complaints, or whatever may be, whatever issues there are. Michael, I know you for many years. I want to thank you for being back here on this, trying to help as much as you can. So, with that, I just want to say that we're moving forward. We're trying to do whatever we can, and if they complain to me or give complaints to the office, I just push over the information, pass it over and just move on. But I want to thank you, because your voice as well, I've heard you for a long time, and you're very clear, and I like that about you. And I always told you that. And everyone else, I know you as well. I know this gentleman over here, I have known of you, you're very, and thank you for taking our time. So thank you, let's push forward. And thank you for the great summer that we had at Fox Hill. I want to say that about my team. We had a great time, and I can't wait for the winter and other events that are coming along. So we're having a fun time. Yay, it's about time. Thank you.
Thank you. That's great.
Evelyn Lopez? It's okay, Evelyn.
Hi, good evening. I never spoke in a meeting before. It's my first time. I want to start by thanking everyone that went to Cayela's Candlelight, Mr. Recco, Frank, Barbara, Ruben Ramos. I know Mr. Russo couldn't make it. I'm here to say that I feel that we should put the street on Harrison Street, going one way towards Marshall Drive as Cayela's Way. She was a great advocate for the community in Hoboken Housing Authority, and I feel she deserves that street under her name and her family. So if you take this in consideration and give us that, we'll be glad, and thank yous for it. Thank you.
I just want to kind of piggyback on what Evelyn said. First of all, Evelyn, we would like to thank you, because Evelyn went out of her way right after this happened to go to Stans and get a plaque for the family, just kind of to thank them for everything that Ms. Cayela, Ms. Colon had done for the community. Like I said before, I know Cayela for many years when our previous director was in place. And I had the ability to work with her. Did we always agree? Absolutely not, but that's fine. Nobody ever always agrees, and that's okay. But her heart was in the right place, and she was really about the people and advocating for the people of the Housing Authority along with her family and everyone else. And I just want to second what Ms. Lopez just said, that if someone deserves that, it would be Ms. Colon. So I would hope that this whole board would also consider that, and we can move forward. Thank you. Ms. Rollins?
Who paid for the plaque? Did you pay for the plaque?
I went to Stan's to do a plaque for her, so he donated it to Kayella's family.
Oh, that's great.
So she has an original plaque that's coming, because Ruben Ramos is gonna build a tree, plant a tree for her, and that small plaque is going to the tree, and
Right.
the big plaque that comes within a month, it's going up on the wall where she lives in 318 Harrison, that Mr. Recca okayed it already.
Awesome. So you didn't, there was no cost to you?
No cost.
Maybe we can send a letter to Stan's to thank them for
I
that.
think Barbara, you said that right? Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing that.
you're welcome.
Thanks, Seth.
I've had a rough August and a very not so good start to September. I sent this email August 23rd regarding late fees and issues in my unit, simply because housing just needs to get their act together. There was a leak in my unit that you had to gain entry to. My son let your staff in, replaced the pipe underneath the kitchen. Come to find out it wasn't done properly, so they had to come in again and fix it. When they did, they left the bottom of the cabinet soaking wet. Your staff is supposed to clean up after themselves. I said it last month, and every time I send a text, make sure they clean up after themselves. They are still not doing that. And they haven't cleaned the hallway properly either. There's dirt all over the place. And, you know, I got a text back from Maria because I didn't pay my rent until I was satisfied with that this pipe was in properly. And I said, I'm not paying the late fee. I'll pay the rent, but I'm not paying the late fee. Oh, well, we're not gonna waive your late fee. And you had proper notice. Everybody got proper notice about the late fees. But my issue is, when you send someone to do a job, they need to do it correctly the first time. And then for the leak to happen, you're damaging the cabinets. It's not gonna come back on me. I didn't make the mess. Your staff made the mess. They should have cleaned up after themselves. Bring a towel with you when you know you're gonna deal with water. Bring something so that you can clean up after yourselves. And don't use the items of the residents. That's not fair to the residents either. You should not be doing that. And then she said, because I requested that it be on my day off, that's because my 15-year-old was home. And when my sons are not home, she's home alone. Surprise, housing cannot come in my house with a 15-year-old there by herself. So, and what I requested on a day off is so that I can be there, get it done, do it right, leave so I can get the rest of my day done, and do whatever I have to do so that I don't have to sit there all day wasting my time waiting for someone to come in and fix something they should have fixed the first time correctly. I don't ever want anyone coming into my unit without proper notification and without contacting me and my boys. I will, once it's to me, I'll let my sons know. If they're available, fine. If not, don't come in my house. Nobody's allowed to do that. If there's an emergency, by all means do it, but make sure you leave a notice on my door, not on the door, on my table. Bright pink, bright orange, I don't care. A note on my table if you have to enter. And make sure that someone goes with your staff so they don't rob me, because they have done that in the past. I'm not paying the late fee for August. Thank you.
Mr. McMillan?
Hello. Hi. This is my first time, so I'm like still trying to learn any of y'all. I've been here for about a year and some change. I'm actually enjoying it. It's my first time in my own apartment. The only issue I'm having is that since I've been here, like my stove, even though it's brand new, for some reason the oven part won't work. And when I turned it on the first time, it kind of like my asthma bothered, so I thought maybe it was the first time. So I tried again, but then, when I said something about it, they came, the guy said, oh, it needs a piece. So I'm like, okay. He said they got to order it. I haven't heard from him, so I said something again. And even though I know Miss Maria, she has been, with them, the same guy came and looked at it and was like, oh, it needs a piece. I'm like, well, you said that before, so why are you, And I'm like, okay, I haven't had an oven for about over a year, so I'm like, I'm really now kind of pushing to get at least a new one, so that way I can cook something for the holidays. And I got this little conventional oven, but they ain't gonna do much. I'm not gonna fit a turkey in that. But that's my only issue. Like, within the next 2 months, can I just get a new, brand new oven, so that way, I can actually cook something, a meal, correctly.
Thank you, Mr.
That's about it.
We appreciate it. Director, I know we don't go back and forth, but can we get him?
We'll be on.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Grooms?
Good evening, how you doing? Can I show you something? Can I come right here and go around show pictures to y'all? Be right here. I'll go.
Well, it depends on the pictures.
This is a cabinet. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Cabinet. That's part of the killing part like this. Right there. Look at this. Look at this. That's a shame. I want to show y'all. That's a shame. I can't have company. I mean, football's coming up now. I can't have company. I'm still have company. I'm still have company.
Sure, just make sure the director sees those and just speak into the mic when after they're done.
That's what we always say. That's what we always say. That's 2 hours.
That's the kitchen right there.
That's what I would report.
Look at that. Look at this. I reported last month, in August. Now, what was it, September now? Nobody came. I mean, I went to my manager, went there, I came to the senior building, she wrote it down, okay, Kelvin can be there. I was still home, nobody came. Nobody came, the last month. Now this is going on 2 weeks. Now, I mean, who want, how to buy new furniture too? Brand new furniture had to buy. No, I mean, you know how much furniture cost now? $1,100, $1,200 a month, $1,200 for a 2-piece, and the table set. It's the same. Football season's coming up now. I'm scared to have company. I'm supposed to have company in my house. My family. I'm scared to have them come to my house. They come out and sit. I mean, it's embarrassing. Nobody should live like this. Nobody. It's a shame. Will you be home tomorrow? Yes. We'll have somebody out.
Mr. Grooms, did you say your apartment number? Because I saw you didn't write it on the paper.
Oh, 245. Okay? Yeah. Thanks,
Is it too late to speak?
Would you like to?
Yeah, it's okay. Thank you, I appreciate it. Good evening, everybody. Michelle was saying. I just want to ask, do you have enough maintenance workers? Because I don't see many, which used to be a lot, and now there's very few. Because I know people, it's garbage cans outside, people, unfortunately, they don't take heed to the garbage can outside, but the buildings need cleaning. I myself mops my building, and I got pains. I be in pain at night. Y'all see me moving around, but at night I suffer. I mops my building because unfortunately you got people that bring garbage out, it drips, they drop stuff in the hallway, causes ants. I'm on the first floor. The lady next door to me has heart problems. The ants, I'm buying my spray, which I'm gonna charge y'all. I'm buying my spray, I'm spraying outside the walls, water bugs, everything. I'm spraying this side of the wall of the building, and the staircase wall. I even get hot water and bleach and pour it down the stairs. After I'm out the hallway, pour it down the stairs to clean the step, because if somebody drips something sweet, we have a bunch of ants. Like, if y'all need some maintenance guys, there's a whole bunch of young guys outside. Give them 4 hours, 4 hours in the morning, give some 4 hours in the afternoon before y'all close. I mean, I think they should be used for something. I mean, besides sitting outside, it would be great. It'd be appreciated to have a job 4 hours just to get paid to clean up where they sitting outside at. I mean, y'all really got to invest in some maintenance guy. If I start cleaning, y'all gonna charge me. I'm gonna start sending y'all a bill, because at night I don't want to go through the pain. But it's ridiculous. I've never seen that we have no maintenance guys, and I lived here long enough to know how many maintenance guys, and I see very few. There's a lot of them I see working, they gotta do apartments and stuff, but we need somebody cleaning them grounds. It's just, and the buildings need to be mopped. It doesn't hurt to pay somebody 4 hours to get the mop, go down 10 flights of stairs, 7 flights of stairs, 3 flights of stairs, don't matter. Go down the stairs this side, go down the stairs on that side. I mean, we really got to do something about this. I understand it's a lot, but I think y'all should look into them young guys outside. I'm quite sure they'd be glad to work 4 hours just to clean up around where they hang up at, and they have money in their pocket the same, okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hussein. Director, could we move on with your report?
We can, thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, I need to let you know that Commissioner Russo said he wants it to be 5 minutes. I can't.
I'll talk fast, or as fast as I can.
Yes.
Thank you. The first part of my report was again acknowledging Ms. Kyla Colon, and we are looking at the idea of possibly next month bringing a resolution to you to rename what we call the Horseshoe over to Kyla's Way. I think it's a great idea. HUD did visit us on August 11th. It was our last board meeting day. I didn't say much about it last month. Barbara Reyes was with us with some HUD dignitaries. I think they were incredibly impressed with where we are and what we're doing. They see housing across the country, across the state, and they know the situation we're in, and it never hurts to have some of the important folks, not to say our local office isn't important, but here we're talking about a deputy assistant out of Washington for the Office of Public and Indian Housing, and our regional director, Marilyn O'Sullivan, were here, so we had a chance to really educate them as to what we're doing, and I think, Barbara, I think we can say they were pretty impressed with where we are.
Yes, they were. Absolutely.
So the word is we're doing a good job. We are going to be talking to the Braxton family this month about when the date should be for the dedication ceremony for the Harrison Courtyard. Paula's going to help us out with that, as well as some other folks, so thank you, Paula. And we will be communicating on that, what that date is for the courtyard. The work there is done now, so we can move forward. We did have our annual picnic for our staff on July 26th. Thank you, staff. This is a way of saying to our staff a little thank you for the hard work they do day in and day out. Hoboken Housing Forward, we do have the Memorandum of Understanding
between the city and HHA in front of you tonight. Was approved by City Council. I've just got to give the big thank you to Councilman Russo for all the work he's done on this, and to our staff and folks, because we really burned the midnight oil on this one, and we got it done. So we're really, really happy, and hope you all pass it tonight. The study from the city for the area in need of redevelopment is continuing. We have been talking to the city on a continuing basis about that, to the staff. We are putting out our RFP for an obsolescence study. We hope to have that to you at the next board meeting. That's a step we need to take in order to move forward with our renovation project. We are studying the options on bringing on a special legal counsel for future development. We've had some progress on that, but we should have a presentation for you on that. We hope at the next board meeting if we can work that out with piggybacking on another housing authority's contract for a special legal counsel. And we are looking at a special board meeting maybe in October and a special resident meeting in October to bring everyone up to date on where we are with Hoboken Housing Forward. So I think by that time we'll have enough news to talk to everyone about the MOU, the obsolescence study, where we are and what our plans are for the future for Hoboken Housing Forward. Security policing issues, we did start the security contract as of September 1st. I know Ms. Vega mentioned that they're having a great experience. That hasn't been our experience across the board. We have some issues. We've communicated with the security company, so it's only been, 8 days now, but we have had some issues. We have communicated with the security company. We're going to be meeting with them on Tuesday morning to hold them to task and see where they are. So we are going to strive for improvement, folks. We're not particularly happy with where we are right now. So we'll be, hopefully over the next month, you'll be saying, and if they can improve, we look for somebody else. But we're on it. We hear you. I've had a number of the residents call me, and a number of the staff is upset, so we're moving forward on that. We are going to be holding meet and greets during September. We'll see you all at the meet and greets in September. So we'll be out to each site in September with me, so to hear you.
Director, what times of the day are you doing those?
We normally do the elderly disabled sites in the afternoon, and then we do Christopher Columbus and Harrison and Andrew Jackson in the evenings.
Okay.
So we'll pass that schedule around.
Please.
You're welcome. As long as we have more than 3 commissioners, you guys are welcome to attend. And again, I do encourage any resident that wants to meet with me personally to schedule an appointment through our office. We have a lot of intakes. We continue to have them. I am reachable. You can drop off a note to central office, call Ms. Lourdes, call us, send a note to your manager, and we'll set up an appointment for you. Needs to be an appointment, because I have so many meetings that if you just walk in, you'd be lucky to get me. The Hoboken Police Department continues to work with us on a regular basis. We continue to refer our cases to court when possible, and we have a few running through now. It is taking a long time through the court system, but we continue to work closely with the police department. We do anticipate applying for funds in October for the Family Self-Sufficiency Program. Let's all knock on wood. That application is in the works through Ms. Corinne. We are developing a resident handbook for each of our sites. That should be published within the next 60 days. And our second edition of the newsletter has been published and widely distributed. You should have a copy of that newsletter in your packets tonight. And I think everyone else has one. Our changes to the Aclp and drug abuse policies are at HUD. They've got their review period. We think that should expire before the next board meeting, so we should have good news for you. Whether they make comments or not, we don't know. We'll see. By the end of September, we should have a response from them. We continue to look for a new plumber and a maintenance mechanic. So feel free to have anyone you know with those skills put in an application down at central office. Our pre-job meetings are being held with the contractor for the Fox Hill project. Ms. Vega mentioned that. We have had again, source issues with the supply chain, waiting for that project to get fully started. I have asked for a meeting with them by the end of the month to do an overall review, and we'll get everyone involved that needs to be involved in that meeting. Housing for Hoboken, we do have in front of you tonight a recommendation for 2 new community trustees, which we'll be talking about during resolutions. We do have good news on vacancies. We're actually reached our goal of 95%. We have reached it. Maintenance staff and management staff, I just thank you. It's just been a great effort by them. We're not done. My goal is 98%. It always is 98%. And we are, since the September 1st report, by the way, we are at 96%.
Nice.
So the 96% is like gold.
Director, that triggers more money for the housing authority?
Well,
or?
we get a better score on our annual fast score,
Okay.
so it'll help us get out of trouble. But obviously, we get more rent.
Right, sure.
So this year we have housed 141 people. 141, right? Tremendous progress.
Great.
That whole elevator project that we've been struggling with moving, that's all in our past now. We're back to where we were, and we intend to continue that. So I think Frank's gave you a couple graphs in there, which I'll talk about as much as you want or not, but it really shows our progress over the past 9 months. Tremendous progress.
Is there a chart in there about the payments of residents? Remember last meeting we talked about
Outstanding.
Talk about that. So,
do you have any data though in the packet?
I have it here. He has it with him today,
Okay.
so we can go to that next. I just want to talk about vacancies first, and their management goals will be at that as part of my report in just a minute. Okay. Special capital projects. The work at Adams Gardens is still going on with the boiler work. We're still waiting for a condensate tank to be delivered before that can be completely done. The emergency generator work, pre-work is being done. Again, won't be finished until spring because the generators can't get here until spring. We did get some good press on the CDBG funding this past month. It was interesting that it got to the newspapers. I reported to you last month on this. But we did get from the city $627,927 commitment. We still have to sign the contract. $300,000 for boilers, $50,000 for lighting upgrades, and $278,000 for security enhancements. Most of that is going to go to camera infrastructure. We have switches in each of our buildings that are original to our camera systems. They need to be upgraded in order to keep the integrity of our systems going. So we really thank the city for that. Last year's CDBG funds are under design, dedicated to boiler work. We should be able to hook them up with this year's amount. So again, thank you to the city. And there's very little left in the 2020 budget. The only thing that's left in our 2020 CDBG is that generator project I mentioned earlier that we've got to wait for the generators to get here. So our management report, getting back to Commissioner Bastado's question, are really focused on our initiatives for the coming year, that occupancy rate, a better score on HUD's PIC system, which is our reporting rate into HUD's PIC system, the removal of that audit finding that we've gotten for a few years in a row now, and then last but not least, focus on reduction in the tenants' accounts receivable, which is that topic. We as well as many housing authorities nationally have had large rental balances that are due and owing. I want to assure residents that as we roll this out, and we'll get to the stats in a minute, that we are going to be fair, we are going to be across the board, but also folks that owe us rent from the pandemic times, we need to work out something. If you owe us rent, we need to sit down and work that out. And we need to talk about repayment agreements and how we're going to do repayment agreements. We're going to be sitting down with each family individually, talking about what you might owe us and making sure you understand what and how and why. We're going to be armed at that point with any outside assistance we can bring in. Like I know Commissioner Reyes just found us a new angle, right?
Yes, that's correct. So earlier today, I received an email from the county. As many of you know, August 31st was the deadline for the emergency COVID money for rental assistance. About noon today, they emailed us and let us know that yes, that is being extended, that individuals can actually continue to apply through us for the emergency COVID rental assistance. They also have another program for individuals who receive SSI, TANF, or general assistance. Those individuals, there is a different application that needs to be applied for them if they do owe rent. And then so there's 3 funding sources that the county is providing now. And the last funding source is the SSH funding, which is, the name really doesn't make sense because it consists of homelessness, but it's not for individuals who are homeless. It's for individuals who also work but cannot afford or have bills such as back rent or utilities. So they will cover up to 4 months of back rent and up to 8 months of back utilities. So through the SSH funding through the county. So right previously to this meeting, I was speaking to Frank. As you guys know, Hope's partners with the county, and so we are going to continue to partner to make it easier for our residents to come down to our office at 532 Jackson to complete these applications. I just want everybody to keep in mind that these applications take time. So we ask that you come between the hours of 10 to 3 because it could be time consuming. Another option that I spoke to Frank about was if they can get me a number of individuals in the housing authority that really need this assistance, and we can make sure that they actually come, we can maybe contact the county to see if they will come on site to one of our community rooms and have their workers do these applications on site. And I am willing to do that. I know Frank said he's going to go back and identify for me how many families we have. If we have to do a couple of days, we'll work on it. Our staff will be there. The county can be there, and we can all work together in an attempt to kind of get us the most help. Not just us, the residents, because technically that's what we want to do. We want to help you guys. So we understand people fell behind. We understand that everyone has to pay rent. And we're trying our best as commissioners and as the housing authority to work on this, because I cannot tell you how many texts I got from Commissioner Russo about, is there another program we can work on? So we're working on it. We're trying to find every funding source that we can find to help you guys. We just ask you guys to, when they're here, please come out. We've had them come out in the past, and unfortunately we've had 5, 6, 7 residents only come and see them. So to them it's kind of, it turns out to be a waste of time that they're not, that we're not having the amount of residents that we say we need assistance for, and they're not showing up. So, and unfortunately, they're not going to come out in the evening, so that's not, it's going to have to be a day where it's during the day.
Is this any resident of Hudson County?
Yes, it's a Hudson County, it is any resident of Hudson County, and we will help anybody. Although our offices are in the Housing Authority, we also have a building over at 301 Garden, so they can go to either office. All staff is trained the same, and we can assist them with the entire process.
What's the group called that the money comes from?
So there's different funding sources. So one of them is ERA2 is one of the funding sources, which is COVID rental assistance. The other one is EA. It's called an EA application, which that one is geared specifically to SSI, TANF, or general assistance individuals. And then the SSH funding is actually for individuals. It can be their income can come from employment, unemployment, regular Social Security, retirement, alimony, child support, workers' comp, VA benefits, and pensions. So, and that's the program that I said could help you for 4 months past rent and up to 8 months with utility.
And sorry, just one
No,
more
no,
question. If a resident has already received funding from the federal government, can this also be in addition to that?
Well, that's one of the things that we're trying to iron out with the county. We have had individuals who have received COVID money in the past, and maybe in the first era when they sent it out. And we're trying to figure out, can we help them again? I know in most cases, honestly, doing this in the past, it has been in where they don't help you again. You know, it's one time per year and that's it. But maybe because of what's happening with the whole pandemic and all that, maybe there is an exception.
So it's worth it.
It's worth asking. It's worth, and we are back and forth in communication with them. And as soon as Frank gets me all that information, I will stay on top of it to maybe have them come on site.
And what's going to help is where we're going to, and we'll be back to stats in a minute. Thank you, because that's really crucial. By the end of September, everyone's going to be getting a letter that owes us rent. And it's going to say, hello, you owe us rent, all right? Come out and make an appointment, all right? So folks know who they are, so start thinking about it, residents. And then we're going to ask you to come on in and sit down and talk to us, and we're going to do everything we can to work with you. We are not interested in evicting anyone for not paying the rent. That's not our interest. It's not what we want. We want to work it out with you if you've gotten behind, right? So once we do that, we're going to ask you to come in for an appointment. We're going to have some extended hours for folks that can't be with us during the day. We're going to be having staffing from 4 to 6, Monday through Thursday, and on Saturdays for folks that need to come and meet with us and work these things out. When I come out for our meet and greets in September, we'll have a presentation on this as well, on where we can go to get assistance, what we're going to be doing in the future here. So we expect to start our meetings right around October 1st. All right? So having said that, our balances are huge. We're up over $1 million in unpaid rent. And we've got some stats for you on some of the issues. A great chunk of the money is by a very small number of families, and then another chunk of the money is folks that are owe us under $1,000, and then there's another chunk of folks under 0 to 10,000. So wherever Frank is hiding,
He's actually giving out a...
hide from me again. So Frank, I'll let you talk a little bit from here.
Okay, so what we talked about last month, right, was the urgency of the rent collection matter. Obviously, like Barbara just said, and we understand from you guys that there's a lot of people who are hurting right now, financially. Unfortunately, the realities is that we do have to pay the rent. And we're going to have to get to that point. So currently right now, there are 569 families that are outstanding rent. That's whether they owe $5 or $30,000, right? So as a whole, that's the total amount of number of families that owe $1,237,577. That amount only represents the outstanding rent. There's another component to this, which is not reporting your income. So if you don't report your income, we didn't know that you owed more money, so this number, if reported properly, would probably be higher. If reported properly, we probably would have other amounts of income that would have come in. So the reason why I'm bringing that into the conversation right now is because you see there's 3 categories here. Out of that 569 families, 316 are under 1,000. 227 families are the bulk of it, and that's above 1,000 and under 10. And then we have 26 families that hold a big chunk of the debt. Between those 26 families, they owe almost $400,000, right? So because of that, we have to treat them differently to be successful, right? Just like in a doctor's office, right? You can't treat everybody the same. Every person has a different situation. Here we're going to have 3 specific methods to handle the situation. So for the first group, which is the 316 families, the people that owe less than 1,000, it could be very simple. They could owe $20, and we're going to clear it up. They could owe $200, and maybe we have to break it down to 2 payments. But I feel that that category, the 316, we can take care of right away, and that's just an automatic. They're gonna come in. Hey, listen, you owe $500, but I see that your rent is only $50. For that group of people, most likely there isn't unreported income. The reason I say that is because the reason those numbers are so low is because those are the folks who have Social Security or $50 rents or smaller amounts, right? So they could have just fallen behind a little bit. That's good news because it ties into what Barbara talked about. Some of those folks might fall into that where if they collect Social Security, we might be able to just, so I'm going to get her that list, and maybe we get 200 families out of that 316 that will qualify for the SSI. So the goal is with these families is, obviously we're not going to collect all the money up front. What we want to do is put them on the path to getting right, which is you're entering into a repayment, whether it's long-term or you just pay off whatever amount that you can afford now, and then we do a repayment for the balance. There is not going to be interest. So this is all we need to do is make the housing authority whole from what was owed in rent, right? For the reason why the categories are less than 1,000 and then the other on this side, those other 2 categories, 10,000 and above and the median families, they are unfortunately most likely to have unreported income as well. So that requires a little bit of, as you can see at the bottom, the skill level employees. So it says 1, 2, and 3. That's because we want to make sure that the families that sit with somebody to talk about their financial situation, they have the right information and that we can do it properly, because some of the folks that owe a lot of money, when we come to the point where we need to make sure that there isn't other debt before we enter into a repayment. We want to make sure that we capture all the debt, so we do it once and we don't have to go back. We don't want to say, okay, we got everybody on repayments and then next month I come to you, oh, but there was unreported income, so we have to do a whole other round of repayments. We just want to do it all one shot. So once a person gets onto the repayment, and what I'm liking it to is, that's the golden ticket into the redevelopment. The minute that you have a repayment agreement in your hand, you've made the housing authority whole, and you are as if you paid your rent, right? So you just have to stay on time with your payments now in order to be able to qualify. So as we're working through it and we're talking to the families, if you can see the next chart, that's kind of like the stages of where realistically we are and what we can do. So right now we're in stage 1. In September, what we're doing is I'm going to work with Matt to finalize the repayment agreement. We're going to train the staff that's going to handle it. We're going to set our goals so that we know what we're achieving each month. I'm estimating it's going to take about an hour per repayment per family, right? The hours that the director mentioned were Monday through Friday, 4 to 6, and Saturday, 9 to 1. That's 28 hours. So if we had one person working, we could realistically say we're going to get about 25 repayments entered that week in those hours. So it's a matter of how many people can we put to work on it, and then we can shorten the length of time. If it was only one person working on it for 28 hours, it would take about 5 to 6 months. So the more people we put into the mix, the quicker we can get people into those repayments. Regardless of how many people we have working on it at the same time, the stages stay the same, right? So October is the kickoff of stage 2, which is when appointments will begin, when people will physically be meeting with our staff to enter into these repayments. Then stage 3 is November, because that is the beginning. November is the beginning of what the model will look like for the next 10 years. Because November is when we've now have a signed agreement with some certain amount of families, whether it's 10, 20, and we already know, are they paying on time? Because entering into a repayment agreement is only worth if you pay it. So now, November would be the first month that the first few families that enter into a repayment agreement, we're going to see, okay, did they pay that? If they paid that, we're good, and then we keep moving, and we keep adding families to that job keeps growing. December is when now we'll have a good idea of who didn't comply and who's not going to play nice in the sandbox, especially with the larger amounts, and that's when we're going to start scheduling actual court dates at that point, which then, if you could see, the next stage is September of 2023, because Matt has said it over and over, it can take 8, 9, 10 months to get in front of a judge and actually get this done. However, and this is what's so important for people to understand, if we go to court for eviction, because somebody's smoking, because somebody did something, because they're wrong, you have to prove it. When it's non-payment of rent, you either paid the rent or you didn't, and you have till 4 o'clock. And then in those cases, the judge says, well, landlord, make a deal with your tenant. And then that's when we're going to say, but we did. And they defaulted. And then the judge is going to say, oh, then 4 o'clock. At that point, it's a done deal. We are not in the business to evict people. Our hope is that not a single family gets evicted. Our hope is that we just get on the right path, because this is the income that takes care of the building so they can be clean. This is the income that takes care of the repairers so that we can have employees. This is the income that we're not receiving. $1 million is a lot of money to be outstanding in rent right now. At most housing authorities, if you're off by $300, it's like, oh my God, what happened, right? So we are going to get there. Just like we did with the vacancy, we're going to do the same exact thing. And then that vacancy chart that you saw, this is going to be the amount of repayments. Every month I'm going to come in front of you and I'm going to say, listen, this month we had 25, now we have 50, now we have 100, till we get to 569. We're either going to have 569 repayments by December, or we're going to have a certain amount and then packets for eviction. So that is where we are. We need to, with Corinne's help, educate folks. Part of the meet and greets, at these meetings, anywhere that we go, making sure that you get counted, stand up and get counted, get on the lease, make sure that you're paying your rent, and make sure that you pay the repayment if you did enter into one, because that is the purpose of it. But if we do that, the MOU is signed. Things are going and new buildings are going to go up, and everybody will be able to take those apartments. And that's what our goal is, to get every family into those new apartments. But we can't do it on rent, and it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So I will now update this report for you monthly, and then you'll have the progress report. Our job this month is to get that staff in place, and then with your support, whatever it is that we have to push, more people, less people, we'll figure it out based on our budget. But that's...
I have a question
Yes.
pertaining to this, as I'm the only resident on the board. But when you're saying they owe this rent, I know when I get my rent receipt, you get your rent, and then you get whatever else you owe, and then the total. So when I mean whatever else you owe, so you call in for a clogged toilet, that your toilet hasn't been, isn't working properly, but it's not your fault, and you're being charged for it to be unclogged. Same thing with your tub. You go in there, they unclog it, it's not your fault, there's an issue, but you're still being charged for it. So when you're giving us these amounts, are these amounts including that? Because, see, I think a lot of the residents, the confusion is that when you go pay your rent, right? And you pay your amount of your rent, and then they give you a receipt. They give you a receipt with all the other charges on it, and what else what is your balance?
No, that's
so
a good point.
Even if you have paid your total rent, you still have a balance if you owe them for coming to your house to unclog your toilet, fix your wall, fix whatever is happening. So that also causes confusion. So when you're saying this amount is the total amount of the rent, it's actually just rent. It's
Just
not
rent.
late fees.
No late
it's
fees,
not
no
nothing
anything else in there.
Okay,
Because we
perfect.
can't go to court on late fees. So
Correct.
this is only what we could go to court for.
Frank, do we, excuse me, do we offer our residents the ability to do direct withdrawal for their rent?
We don't have it set up with the bank, so what we need to do is work with the bank to give it a credit application for them to do it, and then once we have that, we have two options. We have the portal, which we are working on to get it out as soon as possible, but that's different. The portal is a place where you can go and swipe.
Swipe a card, right?
What you're talking about
Yes.
is, can we set you up so that you never have to write another check, and the answer is yes.
Correct.
What we need for that is we need the bank to approve us for a dollar amount of ACH, and that's a credit issue.
Mm-hmm.
So then the housing authority would have to apply for credit to be able to withdraw and deposit $1 million a day based on our accounts. So that's something that we can work with the banks and get that approved.
He knows the answer because we've been working on it.
Okay, great. Because I think that's a good.
Yes.
I think it's a good option, especially for families that are in the arrears, right? Where that becomes part of that negotiation, so to speak, to get that repayment.
Since it's not set in stone, I think that's a great
Yeah.
addition to it. Part of entering into a repayment agreement is that you must enter into direct withdrawal.
And honestly, I mean, I do it, right? Like, I mean, I don't see my bills ever.
Yeah. No.
It comes out of my account.
I think that's the most effective.
I mean, my
way
wife
to do
takes
it.
a lot out of the account too, but that's besides the point. But no, honestly, like, I mean, I personally have set it up that way where everything's paid, right? All my basic bills are taken care of. I never see that money. It basically goes into my account and comes directly out. So I think residents would appreciate something like that, especially if they're kind of trying to balance and juggle some stuff. So
I have a question. So out of the 569, do we know how many families like lost their job because of COVID or?
No,
My confusion lies with like, were we not educating people that you have to pay your rent unless you lost your job, right? That was the whole reason what our federal government did, is like they realized that so many people were losing jobs and not able to go to work and make money, so they stopped the eviction process, right?
Yep.
But the people that were making money or still had their job might have just stopped paying because they heard, oh, you don't need to pay your rent.
There was a lot of misinformation on the street that people were actually going around telling people, don't pay your rent.
So out of the 569, we don't have a number
There
of
is
how
no
many
way to
people
know that, no.
you received a letter saying, listen, I lost my job.
All those people would have already applied for the ERA too. And they didn't because a lot of people that went to apply for it, when they got there, they said, wait, you never lost your job. So
You didn't have a loss. So in order for you to actually get the assistance for the COVID rental assistance, you had to prove to them
That
as
you had
to
a loss.
why you
Yeah.
didn't pay your rent. So if you had pay stubs, and again, you're dealing with the county, they know, they run your social, you gotta give them your information. They run it, and when they're running it, they're finding that, no, you had income, so now we need your income. What was the income during this period of time? Why didn't you pay your rent? And then if you didn't have enough, for instance, some people, they were working full-time and then their hours were down to 4 hours, right? So they lost income in that case. So now they had to decide whether they were gonna pay food or they were going to pay their rent, let's say. So if you proved that you had other bills that you were paying, like for food for the house, your child got sick, the whole family got sick, you didn't have insurance at that time, and you had to pay for medical, that all counted towards that application. So then they would help you, because then you proved to them, look, my kid got sick, or I got sick, I didn't have health insurance, I had to pay my bill, get my medicine, I couldn't afford it, then they would help you. But that's not
So the housing authority never got notice. Like during COVID, every time I went to pay my mortgage, it popped up, big bold letters. If you lost your job or having trouble status because of COVID, let us know, right? Yeah. Did we do that?
Many times in conjunction with hopes.
If I
many
may,
ways of that.
Frank, so I wasn't involved in the preparation of these specific numbers, but the Housing Authority did have, I know, one big mailing, and then I think that it was subsequently sent out again, but there was one big mailing to let people know that not only did they still owe rent, but that the Housing Authority was allowed to use different rules in terms of how recertifications were done and income adjustments were done.
Okay,
so
that's good.
The rules in terms of what needed to be submitted and when it needed to be submitted were somewhat relaxed, and interim rent adjustments were done. So the Housing Authority did publicize the fact that you could submit your income information. Obviously, a number of people had a reduction in income. And that they would perform interim rent adjustments remotely at that time. There was still a requirement that paperwork be submitted eventually, but for a period of time.
Yeah, and you actually bring up an amazing point. The rules in HUD were, if you lost income, just call me and tell me. After COVID is over, we'll verify that, which leads us to IDT. Income verification tool is when they didn't come back to tell us what actually happened, and now we're getting that direct from the IRS.
And to help, I guess, Frank, answer your question, Commissioner Impastato, I think there are a certain number of people who haven't recertified and didn't report that information, and recertification is a whole nother issue. But I think we don't know the answer to that. The Housing Authority doesn't know the answer to exactly who lost their job, who had a reduction in income, because a lot of people just haven't complied to the recertification package. A number of those people are because they had an increase in rent or because they had people living with them who weren't on the lease, so that's more common. But in some instances, they just didn't recertify.
So out of like the 26 families that owe the largest amount, what's the last time they paid rent? Is there?
Some of them it said because the rent is very high, so that number grew quickly, but
has
over
it been
a year.
years?
No, yeah, years. Like it's been.
So that's
like
kind of
2
my.
years.
So that's my question. Though, like as a housing authority, we haven't reached out after the first year of no money coming in.
Yeah.
We didn't reach out to those
Well,
people
there
and
was a
say, hey,
moratorium.
what's going on?
There was a moratorium. There was no court. There was no anything. So it was kind of like.
So we weren't allowed to?
We weren't allowed to even like go to
So
court.
we couldn't contact. No, I'm saying did we
not
contact them?
No, we could contact them, but we couldn't go to court.
And they knew that.
And-
And I think that's the issue.
Yeah, I'm
That
just-
the residents knew they couldn't go to court, so you can contact them 100 times. They know you're not taking them to court, they're just.
I just want to make sure that like these people are not, they weren't educated on the process, that they had to eventually pay this money back if we weren't communicating to them.
I think just in general. Listen.
Now, and again, I don't know the exact answer, but for what you're asking, I think a lot more of those families may fall into the 316 families. I think the 26, for example, I think they deliberately probably ignored the housing authority's overtures to try and get on the same page.
And just, I mean, Andrew, this is well beyond the housing authority. There are landlords all over the city of Hoboken, and I'm sure well beyond, that are dealing with the exact same thing. They couldn't take their tenants to court because they didn't pay their rent.
Yeah, no, I know that.
And now they're trying to catch up, just like we are.
But like those landlords have documented data of sending letters, communicating to their tenants, saying, hey, your rent's due.
Well,
pay.
every month.
Some do and
in
some
the
don't.
entire 2 years, every month they get a statement saying that you didn't pay your rent. And
Okay,
they,
so
and a notice
that's-
to quit every
that's
month.
all I meant, yeah. So
no,
that's-
that's a standard. I thought you meant like a specific
So our
about
tenants,
COVID.
if someone owes if they owe, over $10,000, it's not a surprise to them.
No. Every
Right.
month they get this letter saying you're outstanding in rent, and we're gonna start to.
But
I'm sorry, Frank, I don't wanna,
Yes.
I don't wanna sound bad,
But
I've
they don't-
never heard of a notice to quit every month if you don't pay rent.
Not notice to quit, like the notice for your late rent, right? If I have a manager here. it's-
Oh, a receipt.
Yeah, the
but
receipt.
you get your receipt when, okay.
And it tells you how much you owe every
Yeah,
month.
no, you're right, but you get your receipt when you go pay. If you're not paying, you're not getting the
Well,
receipt.
that's my point is, all I'm saying is
I'm sorry, I'm
that
just.
after
that's
a year
not fair.
of not getting any rent, right? After a year, Barbara, of not getting any rent from our tenant, all I'm saying is, did we reach out and say, hey, what's going on? Is there a reason why you're not paying the rent? Did we communicate at all to them? I know we can't evict them. I know we can't legally get that rent. I'm just saying that was there any form of communication to these people? Like, yes, I lost my job. I'm having a tough time. It's been a tough year. And now we have this all documented. Like, Unit 1 lost their job. That's their problem right now. Unit 2, I don't know. Someone's sick in the family. They haven't been able to pay the rent. You see what I'm saying?
So
I don't.
that
was
we
there-
get to recertification, and they won't come in for recertification.
So I think
Now what we're
the-
saying is that like
I got you.
when
So
you
I think
come
the
in,
fix is actually
This.
to go
Yeah,
on
we
through the process.
We got it now.
But I think what the commissioner's saying is we should have that added step for other families as well that are not on this list, in case something happens. If a family who's not on the list currently, tragedy strikes, whatever it may be, and now they start falling behind on rent, we as the authority should be communicating with them and documenting that communication so that we know.
historically, prior to COVID, I wasn't here. Wasn't that the function every single month? You had a list of people that were outstanding rent, and then that's what led you to court?
Yes, I mean, it's totally different circumstances.
Yeah, that's-
now. There
that's what I'm
were-
saying. I
there
wanted
were,
to get that point, 'cause that's where it
non-payment
was.
rent filings every month.
Every
There was a notice every month prior to the filing of the court case. But we were in court one day a month for a whole day.
Yeah, I just,
Things
this
are
is
totally
a daunting, that
So-
leads me to my next question.
Yeah.
Because this is a daunting task.
Yes.
It seems, I'm not down in the trenches every day, but do you need additional resources?
We do.
Are you gonna need to, maybe you need to hire a consultant to come in?
I don't know about a consultant, we may need to bring on some part-timers to supplement our management staff.
Because you guys are, you know, you have enough
100%.
load now. Everyone back there has enough load, right? Like, now they have to add all this additional steps, and this is a lot, man. So maybe that we should look to.
Is an option giving the staff that's here already the ability to get the overtime and then adding other?
That is one option,
Okay.
yes. Yeah, that is one option. Staggered shifts are an option as well, and bringing on some part-timers to cover for our existing management staff so they can do this. Because this isn't simple, you need to be educated. So we need our management staff to do this. So we're discussing all of those options right now.
And the other thing that's a good side effect of this is that in his management report, he was talking about this and the things that we need to cure, obviously vacancy, rent collection, our PIC score. Our PIC score is tied into late recertification. We will not enter into a repayment with you if you have, I can't give you a repayment if you haven't recertified. So step one is you got to recertify, which is going to help our PIC number. So we're actually, this is swinging the bat in both directions at the same time, because we are going to get our PIC number and the money coming in.
Yeah.
It's good to
No,
know.
I appreciate it.
If I can add one thing, I don't want to keep you here all day, we can talk about this all night, just to a question that the chair asked, and Frank answered it correctly. The numbers that will be sent out for rent, for outstanding balance, will include rent. Now, most often when you're talking about other charges, you're talking about late fees. At this point, those late fees just started being charged again, but really nothing has been charged for the last 2.5 years for late fees.
Right.
So those have not been building up. If they are on the account, it's because they've been on the account for years. And yes, the Housing Authority can't file a case to evict based on a late fee or any other charge other than rent. It's based on the fact that public housing tenants' income has to be tied to the exact percentage. But that doesn't mean that we have to enter into an agreement with someone who owes us additional money. Frank pointed out, if they come on the day of court and say, I have all the rent that's owed, by 4:30 on the day of court, Housing Authority has to accept it, doesn't have a choice. However, if they come to court and say, I don't have that, I want to make an agreement, the Housing Authority does not have to enter into an agreement with that individual if they don't want to. So if you do have families who, for whatever reason, owe significant amount of other charges, for better or worse, this is an opportunity to try and work that out. That should be folded into any repayment agreement. So people may find, okay, well, this letter says I owe $4,000 in rent, but when I went in, they said I owed $4,500. They're giving me two different numbers.
Confusion.
And that is a legitimate source of confusion, but there's a reasonable answer. It's because that $4,000 is what your eviction theoretically could be based on. But the Housing Authority, in order to enter into these in-house repayment agreements, my recommendation is every amount that's outstanding to the authority should be included. There's no reason to exclude $500 that was owed in February of 2020 for legitimate charges just because it was prior to February of 2020. For better or worse, Commissioner Russo mentioned something about negotiation. This is the Housing Authority's chance to have a little bit of leverage in that respect.
Right.
So I just wanted to make it clear that it's not, okay, this is going to just be about rent and everything else is going to be ignored.
No, I get it, but I also want to point out from a resident's point of view is, do you know how frustrating it is? We hear this every month of all the issues that our apartments are having. They're getting called in. Maintenance is, let's be fair, they're getting called in, they're doing the job, the work order goes in, the resident is being charged. And it's not the resident. Our buildings are falling apart. So is it fair for us to charge a resident whose apartment is falling apart?
It's not, and we often take charges off. If somebody comes in
But I
and
think
says,
Are you talking about the rent, or are you talking about?
No, she's talking about the additional
receipt,
charges.
like when you have the receipt, it'll break it up. Like he said, you see your late fees, then you see whatever charges you've had for the month. So if you have maintenance issues, a window, a stove, a refrigerator, whatever it is, your charges are there. And I understand that we have a list of things that we must charge for. And I'm absolutely okay with charging for that if the person has an apartment that, you know, that warrants it. But when you have people who are living in the conditions that we're living in, Can we really warrant that we should be charging them?
Yeah, I agree.
Because it's clogged or the pipe is broken?
But this number doesn't, this number to be
No,
clear
this
is
is
not.
concerning
You're just talking
the
about
other
the
things,
leverage.
yeah,
The
of the
leverage
other
part,
things.
Yeah,
That's
it's
what I'm
leverage
saying.
and it's all about the
Yeah, I
negotiation.
agree.
You see, like, that, I'm just being.
My-
that
my-
was
Understood, and you're exactly correct. I encountered that when we were going to court every month. I would encounter that on a monthly basis, where
And you're
we
gonna
would
see
have
this,
to
right?
make a
That's
call
gonna
and
be
say,
the
hey,
next
what's
fight.
going on here?
Yep.
And frequently, the housing authority would remove charges, waive charges. It would become clear what the story was.
I think
The best I can
oh,
tell
sorry.
you is, no, it's okay. The best I can tell you is this is an opportunity to get the housing authority and the residents to the table. Stuff like that, while a little bit rare, is more common than we would like and probably will contribute to the time some of these meetings take.
I think to your point though too, when you talk about leverage, when we would probably be more acceptable of like, let's just say you owe $1,000 in rent, past rent, and you owe $100 in charges. Listen, we'll waive the 100, just pay the rent. And now you, why are you smiling?
No, I'm not going to acknowledge that necessarily, but yes, there will be
You see, I think that's where you can get we're not trying to nickel and dime.
This will be a given.
We just want the rent, really.
And I'm not speaking on my behalf, because everybody here knows that if I have a problem, I'm gonna absolutely call the director or whoever I have to call, but you have residents that don't do that. And they don't speak up, and they're afraid to speak up and say, listen, I'm not paying this late, I'm not paying this charge because my toilet or my tub was already clogged and it wasn't my fault, so I'm not paying it. And in most cases, they do work with you and they do remove them, and I do say that. But there are cases where our residents are not talking and they don't say it. So I think, again, it goes back to educating.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily what I'm referring to. That's a good example of, those are not necessarily the instances I'm referring to. I'm referring to people who would pay their late every month pre-COVID and knew that they couldn't get evicted based on late rent. They essentially gamed the system and would have, I mean, it's $25 a month. Yeah, that's not much, but that's $300 a year.
Yeah.
And if you're doing that for years, you have a significant balance owed to the authority, which is money due and owing to the authority, but money they couldn't collect under an eviction action.
Right.
So they hadn't done it. So this is an opportunity to try and clean up a little bit.
My last 2 points, one point is to Barbara's suggestion of help from the county. I think it should be documented that everyone should know that that's available. And if you as a tenant choose not to attend that, that should be documented, that we're trying to help you. Here's people that are gonna pay your rent, and you just didn't even show up. So there needs to be an accountability there.
So that will be in the letter that will go out to every resident.
Cool. That's one. Yep.
Should it be necessary, if it's unfortunately necessary, to file a non-payment action, that would certainly be mentioned if a case actually went in front of a judge.
Good. And then second, if, let's just say at the end, we evict, we don't want to, right? But let's just say it comes down to that. The money that is owed, what happens? Is that write off? Is that just debt that's written off?
Do you want me to answer that? So an eviction action is just for possession of the unit. It has nothing to do with the money. We can't force anyone to pay us anything.
So where do we just lie in trouble status?
No, so what happens there is that would theoretically, someone's out, they're evicted. That would become a potential eviction, a potential collection action. You can file a case in special civil part. It depends upon what the balance is, whether it's small claims or not. And you can file a separate action for the money itself. And if you get a judgment for the money itself, you can take different actions. I mean, it would be on a credit report. You can attempt to garnish wages if someone's getting income. I mean, like SSI, you wouldn't be able to garnish. But if someone has a job and they're getting a paycheck, you'd be able to garnish wages. Things like that. So there are avenues to pursue, and pre-pandemic, we were talking about doing that with some of the bigger balances, and unfortunately, that existed pre-pandemic. But unfortunately, with COVID and everything, that has a little bit fallen to the wayside. But that's certainly going to be another tool, because unfortunately, it'll take a while. It'll take a year, whatever it takes, but people are going to be evicted because of this. Let's face reality. Not everybody's going to enter into a repayment agreement and repay every dollar they have.
And what's the reality of really collecting? I mean, look, as a small business owner, I've dealt with situations where people owe me money, and it comes down to, you know, if I had to put a percentage on it, 70% of those people, I never get a dime from them, right? So the reality is, we have some big outstanding balances. I mean, what's really the likelihood of trying to get that money and actually achieving it?
When they owe you the money, it's for a service you already provided.
No, but
Here, there's a roof over their head that they're going to be removed from. Number two, wherever they go, it comes back to us because they can't go to another housing authority, public housing, anywhere in the country.
But I think the commissioner's question is, what's the likelihood that we're ever going to see a dime of that? And on some of these smaller balances, when someone owes, their rent is $50 a month, things like that, reality is very low. Chances are very low that you're ever going to see a dime of that.
Right.
However, on these larger balances that you're talking about, where someone has an income, that money that their rent is based on is coming from somewhere.
Sure.
We've had tremendous success in the past in some of those cases, filing a collection action. It's more time intensive, but once you get into it and streamline it and have staff familiar with the process, it's just like anything else. You can have success.
All right. I appreciate it.
Just a couple very quick questions. First of all, it looks like you and Madam Director have come up with a solid plan, so thank you for that. It looks very well organized. Of the families that are listed here, just since you've been handling this situation, as a gut feeling, how many are trying to work in good faith versus are just not?
So just personally, I haven't been involved in the numbers. This is the first time I've seen some of these numbers, so I'm going to defer to
I think it's going to be interesting, Commissioner, when we start to have these meetings.
Okay.
When we start to have these meetings, start to sit down with folks, I think we're going to have a better outcome.
So the second part of that question is, so these are families, what kind of breakdown in terms of children are affected by this possibly? Or is that a question?
It's a mixed bag. I can actually give you specifics without giving names for the next meeting, but it's a mixed bag. I can tell you right off the bat that the biggest chunk of this money comes from Andrew Jackson North, which is families. So it will affect, the majority of this does affect families with their children.
The reason I asked that question is, are there additional resources, whether they're state or federal, that could go towards those children?
We'll turn over every rock to try to help them. We really, there's private, we don't want anyone.
Yeah, usually there's private entities that may be willing to assist the family and say, I'm willing to kind of like sponsor the family and I'll bring them up to date with their rent. There are individuals that do stuff like that. Civic associations sometimes are a great example of doing stuff like that. Yeah, but honestly, to be honest with you, when we talk about these programs that I just spoke about with the county and usually the state, they're very specific and they are open to families with children. So I don't think they have anything specifically just for individuals who have children.
And I think Madam Chair mentioned it a few of the organizations last month, PEOF, North Hudson, Catholic Charities, I know has helped people. Getting assistance there was ultra competitive prior to the pandemic. At this point, you know better than I do, but I imagine it's not something we should rely on.
No, it's really not, because one of the things is that when this funding goes around, it does usually, and to be honest with you, goes around to these agencies that are experts with rental assistance, and this is pre-COVID. So this is what they deal with, and so usually they're the ones that continue to get those grants. Now what happens is they get them in one hand, and to be honest, it's out the other. So by the time, for instance, North Hudson, the office that helps, that is West New York. So I remember calling for a client, and they said, no, we don't help, because the client was from Hoboken. And I said, well, what do you mean you don't help? No, we don't help, we help West New York residents. And I'm like, what do you mean? This is a federal grant that you got. It's for everyone. So you kind of have to know the insides of it, because if not, I would have hung up the phone and that resident would have not gotten assistance, because they told me that it was just for their residents. So I think that also is a major problem with some of these entities, that they get it and they have their own people that they help first, and then whatever's left over is for everybody else in the county. Personally, I like when it's the county itself that's doing it because they open it to everyone and they're not specific. But yeah, these small agencies like BOF, North Hudson, Catholic Charities, and then sometimes even just getting through to them. It's impossible.
They're ultra competitive pre-COVID. Now, unlikely. So your best source of assistance is probably the county.
I have a question for you, man. From a legal perspective, our nonprofit, the Housing for Hoboken, can we do something where we set up a fund specific for rental assistance, where we do a yearly gala or whatever, some fundraiser yearly, and you know, we kind of raise some money. I mean, Hoboken is a very generous
Or
city.
even donations.
They really are, yeah. I mean, people are willing to help as much as they can. And, you know, a lot of these nonprofits do a lot of good work. Can we actually utilize our own nonprofit to help to pay for the rental assistance for residents?
The short answer is yes.
Okay.
You have to look into, make sure it's planned out properly,
Sure.
consider all the reporting aspects of it, things like that. There'd be all kinds of red tape involved in it, but the short answer is yes.
Yeah, because then we could explore different grants and things like that too, from a whole different perspective, not necessarily just for rental assistance, something that the nonprofit may qualify for, and then we could allocate those funds from there. So those are other options that I think we should probably at the very least explore.
I think he's right with as far as the nonprofit, because as a nonprofit, you can apply for these rental assistance grants. And if we got it, yes, there is a reporting that you have to supply back to them. But I think it could be a great idea
Right,
for the
so
nonprofit.
depending upon circumstances, you'd have to weigh the pros and cons of it. Certainly, I know Bill Ketchum's on the line. Certainly, we'd want to.
Bill told me he was going to fund the balance. Yeah, you looked up for that one,
Now he's there. I don't think so.
But the short answer is yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Frank.
Thanks, Frank.
One other fast question. Could you partner with Senator Stack, or do we know anybody else who can ask for assistance? So I'm saying, like, so if I'm just thinking, if I'm a resident and I need assistance and I don't have, like, or say a connection, I don't know anybody, and I'm really afraid to come and speak with housing or come to speak to somebody, how do we make this, like, not scary and be able to reach out to people and say, I know that we're going to do education, but saying, here are the options, because I think some people are going to be afraid just by the nature of it.
Yes.
But if it's like peer-to-peer, or we make a lot of social media, or we try to do something, so people come and say, don't be scared, it's not jail, we're going to talk to you, we're going to work it out.
Yeah, I think someone like Senator Stack, right? A lot of times those are those one-on-ones, they're individuals, right? Right. We're looking for, and we'll take all the help we can get, right? I mean, of course, by all means, refer people. He loves when people approach him and ask, right? So he's just that type of guy. But I don't think that's really gonna address the large scale,
No, I
of it,
agree
right?
with you, but I'm just.
But if in a situation where they may be timid to come in and speak to housing,
That's what I
or
was
for whatever reasons, maybe that is something where we could refer them. And there are, like I said, there are a ton of other programs out there. There's nonprofits. There's a lot of options here for our residents. I think our biggest obstacle is communicating that with them, and then getting through that process, whatever it may be. So
Right, and then the word of mouth starts to spread,
Right.
and residents are
Sure.
talking to each other.
Especially if you get one or two of these families that owe a big chunk, and that now goes away, right? That all of a sudden, you
They
know,
helped me.
4 months of you know, a large rent is now gone, right? Like, wow, okay, they really helped. You should probably look into that, right?
And frankly,
that
one of
becomes
your
a word
best
of mouth.
resources is sitting right
Yeah,
here.
I know, I agree.
Hopes being able to say to people, hey,
She deals with my
it's not
nonsense
that-
all the time.
Yeah, I mean,
And he
it's not
deals
that
with
daunting, they're
nonsense,
willing
okay.
to work with you and helping spread the word.
Yes, I think maybe when you guys, housing is getting in touch with these individuals about the late rents, maybe what I can do is put together a list of, like I said last month, all the agencies that do help with the rental assistance, and just saying, like, these are some of the resources that may be able to help you. And
Exactly.
and with the phone number, and see if that maybe helps, right?
Yes.
That could turn, because, I mean.
Absolutely.
So I'll work on something like that, Director. and I'll get it to
I
you.
mean, even to communicate through Nixle with those individual families, right?
If they're
Yeah.
signed up.
If they're signed up.
Yeah.
I mean,
And-
hit them wherever we can, like, get that communication going.
Oh, you could send the Nixle out to all the ones, that's right, all the ones that, you know,
The
to everybody in
individual-
general, and say, you know, residents, if you owe rent, please, there are resources, click here so you can see the resources.
Because that's a good resource for anyone, whether they're in arrears or not, right? I mean, it's nice to know that.
And it doesn't sound like much, but the fact that the Housing Authority is even willing to entertain in-house agreements, what we call informal agreements, is an olive branch. From the minute we got here, the instruction our office had is absolutely not, everybody knows everything goes to court. Any agreement we're signing is in court. Well, that's not realistic now. It doesn't help the residents to wait a year, it doesn't help the Housing Authority. So it sounds minor, but that's a pretty big olive branch. Is we want to do as much of this in-house and as much of it by saving a skip day of work, the agony of thinking about, am I going to get evicted because I have to go to court? We want to sort this out. The Housing Authority just wants us money.
Right. Good. I like the plan.
Thank you. We're moving forward. Okay. We have been working hard on trying to work out the details on our project-based voucher RFP. We've got some issues with working with legal on how we're going to put out the RFP and some budgetary issues. Just came out with new rent levels. So we'll be back to you on this, but I want you to know we're working on it.
Okay.
And I'm also meeting with Mr. Villamar next week. We already set up a meeting on that project.
So are we going to be funded at 100%, or is there an issue there?
Well, we'll be at 100%, but it's still not giving us a ton of extra money. You know, we've still got X amount of money in our Housing Choice Voucher Program. HUD's intending on somewhere in the vicinity of a 7 to 8% possible increase this year in fair market rents, but they don't give us more money. They just say this is how your increases is. So we're moving again to another round with Bill, who's on the line of going back through our Section 8 budgets on what we can shake free here. And I'll be talking to Mr. Villamar about the possibility with the backing of the veterans groups of whether, if we can get their backing, we can apply for some special vouchers. We've never had their backing in the past. So we're going to be working, I'm going to be working with Mr. Villamar to see if we can shake some extra vouchers out.
Awesome.
That would be great if we can do that. Because my response from the veterans group so far has been, nope, DCA does that. We don't give you guys. If he can use his influence to get them to back us, there's a good possibility we can get some VASH vouchers.
Awesome.
Yeah. Maintenance reports, we've been actively working in maintenance. I give you those reports. I just want to make a note on those reports. If you look at the major issues that we have in maintenance, fully 73% of them, almost 3/4 of them, are major plumbing issues. Plumbing issues. If you look at those reports that I've had in my attachments, there's stacks that are breaking on the 4th floor. Again, the issue is our infrastructure. You've got stacks that are breaking, you've got major issues that affect the 2nd, 3rd, 4th floor. You've got the leak on the 5th floor, it's affecting all the way down, and our guys are doing amazing work at responding to those. But it's a lot of work. It's a ton of work. So we're responding to those as we go along. I've got some individual ones that I've listed down through my report that maintenance has been working on. Our financial budgets we'll be talking about in a resolution here in a minute. That's why Bill and Emma are waiting for us. And Danny Perez isn't with us. We did have, I think, a great month, a great summer in many ways. We had the food pantry, we had the Familyhood back to school event, the Hopes Game Day back to school event. We had the Movies Under the Stars, folks, with Minions. We had a good month. We had a good month. The basketball league going on. We had a lot of things going on this month that kept us busy. We've got some upcoming events listed in your packet here. The adult care bingo events are coming. I think we're getting back to getting more events at our senior sites. I'm excited to talk about the Hoboken Library pop-up event for Hispanic Heritage celebrations. Yay, we're going to be coming out to each site with Hispanic Heritage celebrations in the coming month or so. So that's going to be great. And I think that's the end of my 5-minute report, Commissioner.
Barbara was longer than you were, so just saying.
Excuse me, I'm your resource. You'll be nice here. I just want to add, Director, and I know I text you guys all during the weekend. We did have a family who suffered a fire, and I just want to commend the staff that was present with helping us. The Hoboken Police Department obviously was the first entity on site. They went to the floor and they evacuated everyone from that floor. And then the fire department came and luckily the family wasn't home. They arrived while everything was happening. No one was hurt. I think that as resident services, and I spoke to the director about this, I think what we have to have in plan is what's a plan of what happens when a fire occurs. Shauna Oliver was the manager on site that day, and I think all of us together, I know as a commissioner, my role is not to get involved in the day-to-day, but living there, it kind of makes me, I don't have a choice. I knew the director wasn't here. I'm watching it from my window, so I ran outside. First thing I did was call the director, but I also want to provide the services that we have available to the residents. So I just want to thank the entire staff, because I think that day it showed what our staff here is capable of doing when there's teamwork. So thank you all for all those that were involved. The family is okay, they're doing good, they're getting assistance from everyone, so that's also very, you know, I'm glad to know that they're getting help from everyone.
Madam Chair, if I could just add, you know, it's a nice moment of pride for me, not only as a commissioner, to see how we, as a housing authority, reacted to it, but also as a councilman, to see how our public safety overall, not just the police department, the fire department, the ambulance corps, the Office of Emergency Management, how that all comes together, and they do it consistently and constantly all the time throughout the city. So this was a situation that happened here at our authority, but they do it every day, everywhere throughout the city, and assist outside the city as mutual aid. So, you know, I know a lot of times they may get some flack and residents might get a little heated and upset, but the reality is that they are always there for us, and it's important to be said, because we want them there and we want to make sure that they keep protecting us. So I just want to make sure I put it on.
We have a tenant who's blocked right now. So if any, I don't know somebody's in spot 19, but if you have a car out there, someone's blocking. So I don't know who's parked in here or.
What car? What type of car is it?
And just, Commissioner Russo, just so you know, that night I did send out an email and I CC'd the Vice Chair and the Director to Director Ferranti, thanking the entire, the Police Department, the Fire Department. OEM was on site immediately. So it was very nice to see everybody working together to help the resident there. So.
Does the resident have new housing yet?
Yes, well, I think
we've got them stabilized. We have them stabilized in a temporary unit as we find their final unit. But we were in touch with the family immediately. Immediately. So working with them.
Kind of dovetailing off the presentation that Frank just gave, is it from a legal perspective? Is there any way to claim some kind of hardship on our own? Because we got one person who, through no fault of their own, lost their home in a fire, and then we got a whole bunch of other people who aren't paying the rent. Is there any way to speed up at least one of those eviction processes?
Well, the fastest way is to find an existing unit we were already working on. So we identified one we're already working on, and we're accelerating the work on that unit to get them their permanent housing. Okay. So it's not an eviction matter, it's one that we already
There's a unit allocated.
There's a unit allocated.
The family immediately, the housing authority immediately stated that they would put them up in a hotel, but they refused. They decided they wanted to stay with family in town. And but yeah, the housing authority could not have done more than they did that day to help the resident, and I have to say I'm extremely proud of that.
And to that regard, a special shout out to the chairwoman for what you did on that day, and to Ms. Shauna. Shauna, thank you. You were on the spot because I was out of town. So, but the phone was burning. I mean, we were all coordinating, no matter where we were.
We had a conference call in the middle of the whole thing going on.
We're all talking. We're all going OEM. Everyone was there. We all had our phone numbers. It was tremendous.
Job well done, everyone.
And something else I want to commend is all those that participated. I know the police department donated book bags to the Family Hood book bag giveaway. They also donated to Hopes a few bags that they had left over. And I'd like to inform everybody that Hopes that day itself gave out over 300 book bags. We do have, we have a registration process for everybody that gets a book bag. And so we tallied it up. It was over 300 book bags. We do still have some few book bags over at 532 Jackson Street. So if anyone knows of any family, whether they're from the Housing Authority or not, that their child may need a new book bag, I know school just started, just reach out to me. If not, stop by the office. Jelly is one of our staff members there, the lady with the picture. She's one of my staff members, and she's there from 9 to 5. So if anybody within, anybody needs help, just stop by there and we'll give them bags. So thank you.
One comment on, I think the newsletter is fantastic. Compliments to you. I think it's awesome. I love the chef's corner. Nice little touch. I think one thing, and I don't know about everybody else on the board, but under board commissioners, if you can just add, I would be open to just adding my cell phone number and my email, just if anybody wants to reach out directly.
Yeah.
You can ask everybody else, but for me, I would like that to be added if you can, if there's room for it. But other than that, this is awesome. Awesome stuff.
Yeah, and in addition to that, I was going to ask the director offline, but I might as well ask now. I'd like to be put on the NICSA list as well, so that when they go out,
sure,
absolutely, just text the.
Yeah. No.
What is that? You mean like you get the message?
Yeah, for the agency.
Website, sign yourself up.
Yeah, dude, just it's right here, bro.
Okay.
We can have you read the letter.
Right here, I'll sign you up right now. Sign me up then. Text 4HHA to 888-777. Get your phone out. Let's go. Give me that.
I want you to go to the website. It's perfect. Do it at your leisure.
I kind of left another back on the list. I mean, come on.
I got you.
Is that it?
I'm done.
We're done?
Thank you. It's my 5 minutes.
Well done, Director.
Thank you.
So resolution number 2022-0901, resolution of the Housing Authority of the City of Hoboken to approve the meeting minutes for August 11, 2022 regular board.
Motion.
Second?
Second.
Roll call, Director?
All right. Anthony Forbes, Andrew Impastato.
Yes.
Aaron Lewitt.
Yes.
Barbara Reyes.
Yes.
Michael Russo.
Aye.
James Sanford.
No.
Erica Seitzman.
Ah, yes.
I just want to say I'm so sorry, and I didn't mention this before. Commissioner Forbes did text me. Unfortunately, he's short-staffed at the shelter, and he could not make the meeting. He was going to try to log in. So I just want to put that on the record. Thank you. Resolution number 2022-0902, resolution authorizing the payment of the monthly list of bills for the Hoboken Housing Authority.
Motion.
Second.
Director, call.
Any discussion?
Any questions?
Oh, any questions? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody has any questions.
No? Anthony Forbes, Andrew Impastato.
Yes.
Aaron Lewitt.
Yes.
Barbara Reyes.
Yes.
Michael Russo.
Aye.
James Sanford.
No.
Erica Seitzman.
Yes.
Resolution number 2022-0903, resolution adopting the annual and capital budget program for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2022 and ending September 30th, 2023.
Motion.
Second.
Any questions?
That's what we have.
We passed the original one a few months ago, and this is the final version. The same, essentially the same, since Bill's been waiting for us for so long. No changes from the last one, right, Bill?
No changes.
a few questions from your state, a few speed bumps with the initiation of a new program for fast method of submitting the budget. But when we got done, the state was comfortable with the numbers as presented on the budget.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ready then? Anthony Forbes, Andrew Pistato.
Yes.
Aaron Lewitt.
Yes.
Barbara Reyes.
Yes.
Michael Russo.
Aye.
James Sanford.
No.
Erica Seitzman.
Yes.
Resolution number 2020.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
Great night. Great weekend.
You too.
As well. Resolution number 2022-0904, resolution of the Housing Authority of the City of Hoboken to appoint 2 community trustees to the board of the Housing for Hoboken Incorporated.
Motion.
Second.
Any questions?
Yeah, I would like, is there like a bio or like a packet on the 2 people? I don't know.
I think we had that last time.
Do we have it last?
Didn't we have it
I
last
thought there
time?
were 2 different names.
No, it's the same people.
There were 2 different
No,
names. That was going to be one of
there
my
was one
questions.
different name.
Oh, one different.
Excuse me, yes, one different name.
So is there like a, I don't feel comfortable. I don't know either one, like to the degree where I feel comfortable to vote on it. So is there like,
So, Madam Chair?
Sure,
Mayor, thank you.
absolutely.
So April Harris is one of them. She has been around Hoboken for 40 years. She runs In Jesus' Name Pantry. So if you're familiar with the shelter and the Hoboken Community Center, she started the same time as the shelter.
sure.
When the fires, when the arson kind of plagued Hoboken. So she has been around for this is her 40th year. She works out of OLG. So she is if I don't have the right Christian language, I'm apologizing in advance. Missionary and such, does missionary work, like nonprofit works with many housing authority residents here, many people out in the community. She sits on many boards, like she's basically like a saint. There's nobody else you would basically trust with servicing this population, understanding, having the relationships with the community. I've worked hand to hand in floods many times. With April, I would give her, I don't have kids, but I'd give her my dog, so if you know me, that's a big deal. And then when we talk about Ms. Hernandez, right? Rodriguez, yes, she was here. She is a former commissioner on the, and if I'm not saying all this, please correct me, she is on the resident advisory board here, has done amazing things for the community, an advocate for the community, so we felt that she would be, she's familiar with the process, she's already advocating, and this was to continue her advocacy.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just add, I know both of these women personally. I've dealt with them on the city level. I've dealt with them here at the Housing Authority in my prior term. I think they're both fabulous people, and I think they would do a great job on that board. So I don't have, again, but they're people I know and people I've worked with. So I understand your concerns, Commissioner, but it's, for me, it's an easy vote for me.
Is there a reason why, what's the reason why the other 2 people were taken off?
Well, I think it was only a switch of one. I think April Harris was originally.
Correct.
Yeah. For me, anyway, the addition of Jeannie Rodriguez on this is to make sure that we have a resident of the Housing Authority on there.
Correct.
And someone who is familiar with the process and the board and its workings and the community. So for me, that's, to me, a no-brainer.
And former Commissioner Rodriguez also served as the chair for many years on the Hoboken Housing Authority board many years ago. She continues to advocate. I think she's one of our biggest advocates. She represents the residents to the fullest, has no problem telling us what we're doing wrong and when we're doing it wrong. And I think that's what we need on a board like this, is to have someone that's going to hold us accountable and not say, because I know you, it's okay, let's just do this. So I think she would be a great addition. April Harris is someone that I have worked with. I know personally as well. We work with her. We partnered with her through the agency I work with as well. She's another very hard another person who advocates for our residents. Her target population is our residents. I want to say the majority of the people that she helps come from our community. And she's known everywhere, city everywhere, and I think she could also be a great advocate for everything that we have coming with the housing for Hoboken.
What, and the last thing I'll just talk about, what would the process to get these two names? It starts, I think the three of you sit on them?
Yes.
Is that right? And then so you come up with, you get the applications?
Yes, we review them.
Review them and then offer the...
Discuss them.
Discuss them and then offer,
And then
okay.
we advise, we can only advise.
Yeah, so my only thing, and I'm gonna have to abstain from voting on it, is that I don't feel comfortable. I trust you guys, but like a 2-minute thing on each person, I would have liked an opportunity to talk to each person to see what the situation is or what they're all about. I would have liked an opportunity to see like a bio, a resume, which I don't see any of.
I think we should get that to everybody anyway. But
Yeah,
besides,
that's. I just wanted to explain how I'm gonna. That's what I'd be at.
So,
I appreciate that.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Foreman was one of the people that was originally put forward. Did he withdraw his nomination or his application, or is there a reason why that changed?
I think it was a decision made collectively that maybe he was not the best fit for
We wanted
this.
the resident, excuse me.
We wanted a resident.
Madam Chair.
Correct, we did. After reviewing it, we thought and we looked back at the board and said, there's nobody here other than obviously myself that would really represent everyone as a whole. Jeannie has been around way longer than me and knows a lot more than I do, so I felt like she could definitely, absolutely be an asset to us.
It's also said that the idea of, or the said rumors or everything about people how we're displacing anybody. The more people you have, the residents and people on the ground explaining who have power, who have understanding, who have leadership positions can say, no, that's not true. We have one form replacement. I'm on this board, you have my word, and they trust, the more people that they trust. Not taking, not that they don't trust us, but they're going to have a little more trust in Jeannie than they are going to say in any one of us. And it's very important to have, it's very important to have trust and to understand one-for-one replacement. And we might have to say it 5 million times, and that's okay, that you follow the process, you follow what you're talking about today. Nobody's going to get evicted unless you did not follow the process, and we have given you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 chances to follow the process. So that is extremely important. I think that's the number one thing that we're trying to convey to everybody. Probably have to say it 1 million times or maybe 10 million, which is okay. We don't want to evict anybody, and we want to make sure everybody has one-for-one, we have a one-for-one replacement. So that's why, at least we felt, that Ms. Rodriguez is the best choice for the job.
Well, I guess to Commissioner Estada's point, is there any issue with tabling this motion and reviewing it at the next meeting after we had a chance to speak with people? Because honestly, I thought when this motion was coming up that Commissioner Foreman, I'd be voting on Commissioner Foreman, or former Commissioner Foreman, for this. And absolutely no disrespect to Jeannie, who I served with a while ago as well. I'd like to understand what her vision is for this board, as well as the other person who I don't know anything about.
I just feel that, to be honest with you, we are moving along in the process with the city and everything else that needs to be get done. And I feel like we put it out, we took it back, we didn't go through it. So now holding it back is just going to continue to hold us back. And to be honest with you, as a resident who lives here and removing myself as the board chair, I feel we need to move on this, because when I sat here earlier today and said our buildings are falling apart, they are. And we need to move on this now. And until we don't have a board in place that can actually take on everything that's going to come with it, we're not going to be able to do that. And please correct me, Director, because you're more knowledgeable in this than I am. I'm learning the process, but am I right in saying that?
Well, I think you are, and I think it's part of our subcommittee system, right? Is the subcommittee is tasked with turning these folks inside out. And that's what they do, rather than have the whole board to do the interviews and have the whole board become familiar with folks, that the subcommittee's job is to do that.
So I don't want to table this, is my.
I'm fine with voting.
Okay, so good.
And just to answer the commissioner's question, I don't know if this is helpful. I mean, I know that some board members have already expressed their desire to move forward. You could always make a motion, but it would require 4 affirmative votes to table. So it's up to you if you wanted to do that. If there were not 4 affirmative votes, then the motion, which is currently on the floor, which is the resolution, would proceed.
Well, I guess then one last question, because you guys have done your research. What was involved in the vetting process? How did the decision-making come about to choose these 2 individuals?
Well, we met with the individuals. We had Zoom call, correct?
Yep.
We had Zoom calls with them. We questioned inside and out. There was other people that had also applied that we actually asked the director to go back because there may be conflicts of interest that could prevent them from coming on the board, and that was exactly the case in some situations. So I want everybody to understand that this was not a decision that was made overnight. When we brought it the last time, we had met about 2-3 times, and bringing it back now, we met 2 times. Just the other night, we met again, just to confirm that everybody was on board and that was okay with the decision that we had made. So I want to assure everyone that this was a fully vetted process. It was transparent amongst all of us.
And April Harris and Ms. Rodriguez both work with the population more so, except for Barbara, more so than any one of us. So when people are working with the population more than myself, you do your due diligence and then you trust the people on the ground, like the residents. You hope the residents are trusting us and making the best decisions. And that's how you kind of weigh these things to make sure, well, whoever put us here, the city council, the governor, or whatever, are trusting us to make these decisions, that hopefully they wouldn't put us here if we're not able to think of the residents. The residents always come first. Anything that we try to do, we put the residents first. And by putting a resident on this committee is showing that we're putting the residents first. And it's extremely important for people to see, especially for me, I can't speak for anybody else, that we are putting the residents first. And
it also demonstrates to the residents that they're being heard because one of their people are on the board. So one of us is on that board. And they're being heard. You know, like I said, yes, I live here, but I think Jeannie probably knows 200% more people than I know because she's been around a lot longer than I have. So I think, you know, I think together as an entire board, we can get the word out to the residents, we can make them knowledgeable, educate them, and we can assure you that as a board, we're also going to make the best decisions for the housing, housing for Hoboken and for
I would say, I would just make a comment that I would agree with you if, like, it sounds like both of them are perfect commissioners for the housing authority, right? I think the housing for Hoboken is a little different in the aspect that they're interviewing potential developers. Am I right with that?
That may well happen.
We don't know that.
But they're part of the process for the whole, and James can speak to this because he was on it.
Sure.
You know, you're interviewing consultants for our development, right? You're interviewing housing, who else?
We picked a planner. So the planner for 2020 was the team, I was on the board and we picked a planner. But the same, so what basically, so we had 13 people, maybe 15. So I had to sit through 15 of them, and then we narrowed it down to, like, say 5. And then we brought the 5 to the whole board. And then the whole board collectively made the decision. So you're partially right there. Yeah. But that's not necessarily necessarily what that nonprofit may or may not be used for. Because at the end of the day, we have this board is going to make the end of this decision. So you have to work partner in conjunction. But by working in partner in conjunction, the best people who are on the ground and are in the collective, in that subcommittee's opinion, are April Harris and Ms. Rodriguez.
The other thing to your point, Commissioner, I think in our discussion about this was that we now have experts with us. We now have the enterprise partners and we have the Association of Torrey Gallas that's in the past, we can call on them. So our discussion on that was that the trustees should be community Hoboken based, and we can call in those experts to help us with that experience, with the development experience, because we did discuss that, because we said, oh, isn't this a hole in what we're doing?
Have experience in that.
Yeah, and we said, now we've got experts, because Enterprise is fully with us now, we've got some of the best in the country now, so we can bring them in as we need them.
Was there a, like in the procurement subcommittee, we use a criteria that we score?
No, we came just to a consensus. We came to a consensus.
So there was no like criteria?
There was no ranking point system, and we did talk to the attorney about that.
It would be nice to see, like, to have that, going forward maybe.
We did talk to the attorney about that. Yeah.
We said.
At length, right?
Yeah, so we talked, that was the first thing we said, because we want conformity and you want consistency on every.
Yeah, you don't want to see favoritism.
No, so you want conformity and consistency across the board, but because this was like another arm or a special entity or whatever the legalese language is, he said we don't have to worry about that, so we didn't.
It's different than a consultant. It's not like hiring an architect.
Right.
It's different.
So he said that we just we didn't have to.
Is there a way we could see the applicants, all applicants?
Of course.
We could have that mailed out?
Oh, of course. Yeah.
When I was on board, the members of the commissioners, all the commissioners were given the applications and they were allowed to speak with and do interviews. I just, for my own sake, I would like to make a motion to table resolution number 2022-09.0.
I'll second it.
Director, roll call?
Anthony Forbes, Andrew Bastato.
Yes.
Aaron Lewitt.
Wait, is yes?
To table.
This is on the motion to table the resolution.
Yes is to table it, no is to continue.
Barbara Reyes.
No.
Michael Russo.
No.
James Sanford.
Yes.
Erica Seitzman.
No.
On the motion.
On the motion.
So now it would be on the resolution
itself,
which there's been a motion in a second.
So on the resolution itself, Anthony Forbes, Andrew Bastato.
Abstain.
Aaron Lewitt.
This is the resolution itself,
This is
right?
now.
This is the resolution
This is the what-
to appoint Ms. Harris and Ms. Rodriguez.
So this is the one, are you agreeing with this?
This is to
This is
appoint
the appoint-
April Harris and Jeannie Rodriguez to the board.
This is the
Yes.
motion, yes.
Barbara Reyes.
Yes.
Michael Russo.
Aye.
James Sanford.
No.
Erica Seitzman.
Yes.
Resolution number 2022-0905, a resolution of the Housing Authority of the City of Hoboken to approve Memorandum of Understanding with the City of Hoboken with respect to redevelopment of authority property in accordance with the Hoboken Housing Forward Strategic Plan.
Motion.
Second.
Director, roll call. Any questions?
I have questions.
Sure.
So we got this last night at 5 o'clock.
Right.
Is it my understanding that director and council were involved in preparing this?
Very much so.
Okay. Would you like to maybe help us to understand how this came to be?
Sure. Since we passed our strategic plan, the city was very clear with us that the first thing we needed to do was a memorandum of understanding with the city on how we were going to proceed up to the redevelopment plan, how we're going to get to our redevelopment plan with the city and move forward into the future. So the city's rule is that they always do a memorandum of understanding with an entity like ourselves. So we started to talk about that memorandum of understanding right from the beginning. The city did a draft and they gave it to the Housing Authority. Myself, our staff, and Harold and Matt went through that memorandum of understanding. We made some changes to it. In the meantime, time was moving along, and I think in some consultation with the city, we really wanted to get this going. We wanted to get a final understanding between us and the city. So we met up to yesterday afternoon with the planning department, with the city's legal team, with our legal team and our staff, as well as the enterprise partners and HUD was involved as well on the call, the HUD representative. So we went through this in detail. We've been going through it for 3 months now in detail, and we decided we needed to get this agreed upon. We all agreed upon on all the terms. We believe that this moves us into the future. It opens the door for the city to move forward, finish the area in need of redevelopment study. It opens the door for the city then, once we are done with that, to move forward with the redevelopment plan, and by the way, pay for it, because the city's doing the bill on this, on the area in need of redevelopment and the redevelopment plan. So this opens our door. It gives us who's going to do what responsibilities we will have. It does not address everything for the next 5 years. We are still going to have to come back to the table on a memorandum, on a revised memorandum when we get to actually doing the actual development, on who's going to pick the actual developer, who's going to do those things. But it leads us through the redevelopment plan and gets us on the same page as the city.
And this is essentially the city treating the housing authority exactly the same as they would treat anyone else who sought a redevelopment plan. Essentially, the city said, this is our requirement if you want to even complete this study to designate it as an area in need of redevelopment, and to eventually have a redevelopment plan formulated, considered, passed, adopted. This is what we require. So this is the very basic framework of saying, okay, let's get this process started. We're all on the same page. As the director mentioned, this is by no means
the end.
The end, right. This isn't the be-all, end-all.
No means.
Right.
Just the beginning.
This isn't the redevelopment plan. This isn't anything more advanced. This is essentially a first step to get the ball rolling.
So how effective would Housing for Hoboken be in terms of making decisions versus the entire board? Because when we set up Housing for Hoboken as a nonprofit, quite often the nonprofit takes possession of the property, takes possession of the financing, all that stuff, and commissioners don't.
In terms of the exact ownership structure, that will really depend upon how the project or projects develop. Right now, for example, Foxville Gardens converted under RAD. Housing Authority kept total ownership of Foxville Gardens. Housing Authority owns Foxville Gardens. Nobody else has any ownership of Foxville Gardens. I'm not guaranteeing that will be the case going forward with every Housing Authority property, but I can guarantee you that the Housing Authority will retain a large degree of control. Often in situations like this, the Housing Authority would keep possession of the land. I'm not guaranteeing that's going to happen in this instance. It really depends upon how this whole thing progresses. That's fairly far down the road, and that's a decision for all of you. But the Housing Authority will be very involved in the decision making. By entering this Memorandum of Understanding, the Housing Authority wouldn't be ceding this board wouldn't be ceding any decision making authority to Housing for Hoboken's board.
I think part of that question, I'm not sure exactly what you're asking, but I think part of the question, Aaron, is if we do the next project, will Housing for Hoboken act just like it did for Fox Hill? Maybe yes, maybe no. It depends on when we get to that development project, whether Housing for Hoboken will be the active nonprofit or whether we will have to form a new nonprofit. Sometimes that happens with each project. Under tax credit rules, you have to form a new limited partnership and then a new nonprofit. My last organization I worked for, we had 6 nonprofits because we had 6 different developments that we developed over time, and we had to develop a separate nonprofit for each one. They were all under the control of the Housing Authority.
Right. I was going to say, to the decision that any of that is done,
all of
that decision, that designation will be made by this board.
Right.
Yeah. Housing authorities.
And having different nonprofits in charge, it isolates one building, so if there's a lawsuit in one building, it can't roll back to all the other buildings.
Some of that's true. That's part of it, and that's very far down the line. But the question is in terms of who's making the decisions. If you adopt this MOU or enter into this MOU with the city tonight, the answer is this board is still in charge of every decision.
So section 2, subsection 2, last sentence, the HHA Board of Commissioners will have final approval of the role of the HHA parties consistent with the MOU. That means we retain full control.
Correct. I'm sorry, where is that, James?
Page 2 of 4, section 2.
Section 2.
Bullet point number 2.
Got it, thanks.
Correct. And that's essentially saying what I was just trying to say, that this board, this body will retain all decision-making authority under this agreement, whether you see something going forward because of the specifics of a particular development is a totally different question and very far down the line. But under this MOU, you're still in total control.
So to that point, does section 5, parties' responsibilities, first line, the HHA, the words are will be the primary stakeholder, should that be, instead of will be, should it say is, since we are the authority, it is the authority? Because will be implies it could change.
In this sense, will be is just because there is no scope of work yet. Right. It's talking in the future, right? The scope of work that doesn't exist, and then it goes into the parties agree to undertake the scope of work. Just future tense because it doesn't exist at this point.
Got it.
Will be, shall be, both meaning that the housing authority is. It doesn't, for example, it doesn't say the housing authority may be. That would be.
So going back to section 2, subsection 1 for a city. It lists a number of people, a number of staff. As a matter of understanding, do we know who these people are that we're going to be working with? Because I understand this is an agreement, a memo of understanding between the city of Hoboken and the housing authority, but who are the people involved?
I mean, we know who some of the current people in these positions are, but really that would be up to the city. If those people change in those positions, if somebody else gains one of the titles of one of these positions, that would be up to the city.
Okay.
And that's just consistent with any redevelopment that's done in the city of Hoboken. Those are the players from the city's perspective on this process, right? So whether it's Director Brown or a future director, that's who's going to do it, right? It's not going to wind up being, like the Director of Environmental Services. It's going to be the Community Development Director.
So I guess as we're going through the process and more detail is coming forth, could somebody present that to all commissioners of who's going to be the people from these various departments?
Oh yeah, I mean, of course. I don't see why we would want to not do that. And if there's a change, I mean, we'll probably know before there's an official communication. Knowing Hoboken, we'll definitely know before there's an official communication.
For the director.
Right, so those individuals would be appointed by the city or the particular department, whatever it is, and I'm sure the director would be happy to update you on who's involved in these discussions.
When that happens, I would like everybody on the board to know who those people are going to be. If you just make a note of that.
Well, I think
I don't anticipate any changes.
And I think in some of these instances, it may be that the housing authority shows up to a meeting with representatives from various entities and these individuals are there. So it may be that you find out about it after a particular meeting has taken place. I don't know that the director would necessarily be able to. That
is acceptable.
Just making sure that's
I would like to know who is formulating this, who has influenced this, because we're starting a process here, and the process as it's going is. I understand we all want to try and get this done as quickly as possible, but I'm also only seeing this from last night.
They just finished it.
I understand you guys just finished it, so I'd like to know who we're working with, that's all.
And I understand your concerns, but in reality, these are the city's representatives. Now, can you name me some entity of the city that is not listed here that would not have anything to do with this.
Yeah, I mean, that there's, you know, you're not going to be dealing with
Department of Recreation, or whatever the name.
I don't know any of these people, so.
No, and I understand, but
which is a valid point, right? And from you, like for me, when I sit here, and this is like just standard operating procedure for me, right? Because we do this on every redevelopment in the city of Hoboken, so I'm used to it. You're not, right? So those are valid concerns from your perspective. What I can say is that the reality is this is really just standard, right? And no matter what we, as the housing authority, want, that stuff's not going to change. Because without the city doing what they need to do, they just won't move along with that process, right? So ultimately, the city is what's called the redevelopment authority, right? Years ago, this board actually was the redevelopment agency. So it was an outside agency that did all the redevelopment in the city of Hoboken. That was changed in, I think it was 1993, where the city council then became the redevelopment authority. There's a slight shift in what that is, but once that happened, the city council then makes those decisions. And this is the staff of the city council, so to speak. So if we came back as an authority and said, look, you know what? We don't want to include the environmental services director. The city would just come back and say, well, too bad, right? You know what I mean?
So fair enough.
And it doesn't matter who the individual is, because that's an appointment made by the mayor.
Well, so, but then that really kind of is a good segue into section 3 about understanding the parties.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say that we as an authority may have a concern about one person who is representing the city, but then, and we're supposed to retain all the authority here and be the primary stakeholder, but if we voice a concern that we don't want to work with a particular person, then what happens? Does the city just come right back at us and say, well, tough luck?
Well, it's almost like, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it's almost like you going to, you know, you're going to hire a plumber to do work in your house. And then you go, you know what, I don't like the plumber. I like the electrician, I just don't like the plumber, right? The plumber goes, you know what, I'm not going to do the work. And he walks out. Now you're holding the bag. You don't have a plumber, right? It's the same situation. If we turn around and we say, no, we don't want to work with whatever city staff that normally does this, the city has every right to just go, you know what, that's fine. We may not want to move forward with a redevelopment area or plan or agreement, right? So that's the prerogative of the city, just like we, from our perspective, go, okay, we don't like any of these people, you know what, we're going to scrap the project, we don't want to do it.
Right, I was going to say.
We have that same ability to walk away, but that doesn't get us anywhere.
The equivalent is that the city would not be dictating who could be attending these meetings on behalf of the authority necessarily, unless that person has absolutely nothing to do with the meeting. So if there was some representative from the city who, for whatever reason, the housing authority thought, oh, that person has no business being here, then there may be an issue. But essentially, as Commissioner said, the city is the gatekeeper on this. And it's just making it clear to the authority, essentially, hey, these are the players on the city's end, this is who's going to be involved.
And I think the ultimate question is too, Commissioner, like if there is an individual or a title in there that you have major concerns about, I think we should know about it, right? Because maybe those concerns are really valid, and then we may want to have a conversation with the city to say, look, there's concern about this director, or whatever it may be.
Which is exactly why I started by saying I just don't know who any of these people are.
So maybe we should have a meeting, I don't know, well, you can't, but.
I think
it doesn't change anything.
None of these people, and I don't think any of these people are going to have the ability or responsibility to make any impactful move without us or the city.
Or the city, right?
Right, the city council.
It's not like one of these people on this page
could. The city would be the decision makers. It's just, these are their appointed representatives for these things.
And right now, most of it is Director Brown.
Director Brown, we have some planners in the city, we have our engineer, right? There are technical aspects of these conversations. And then the legal teams, right? So,
right, for example, you wouldn't deal with the city saying whoever your chosen attorney is, being like, I don't like him, I don't want him here.
No, you can't.
And for the same way, you're not
And that
going
would've
to
been
be
fine,
dictating
right?
that to the city.
And we know they'd never come up and say, we don't want to deal with your executive director.
You're gonna fire him out if they
What
want.
you might want to say about that, right?
Yeah, look,
Because that's,
I think the reality is,
Untitled.
it is kind of standard procedure here. There's nothing, there's most certainly nothing nefarious in there. There's no hiding of who these people are. I mean, you can literally go on the website and get every one of these people, you know, and look to see who they are.
So I think the solution, and I'm sorry to interrupt, I think the solution to the commissioner's concern is, and I think the director's already agreed to that, is if there is a major meeting with the city, I'm sure the director can give you a list of attendees who is there on behalf of the city, and that may help alleviate your concern.
and if you want me to send out a list of who we worked with on this from the city's angle, people like Chris Brown, by the way, that did a tremendous job, I've got to say, on pulling this together. I mean, he was a spark here, and his staff, Caleb, helped quite a bit on this, so.
That's all I'm asking for.
Yeah.
Just good to know
Yep.
who was prepared this and who was working with.
I think if you tear away anything from James, at least what I am, is from the beginning of this process, we just want it to be as transparent as possible. Like, we don't want any surprises, we don't want anybody popping up, and I think our residents deserve that. So that, I mean, I think we're doing a good job of that so far, and it's been a tedious process, and this is a big step. So I appreciate everyone involved that's worked on it for sure.
And the city did pass this last night as well.
Yeah, and I was just gonna say, before we voted on it, this is, you know, it's awesome for me to see it on both sides, right? To deal with the director, make sure he's doing what he has to do, making sure the staff is doing what they have to do. And they've been excellent, as the director said here, you know, they've been excellent on the city side. We made sure that we had this ready to go before it was completed. It was on the agenda at the city. We had every aspect covered. If there were concerns, how we would do it as an emergency, if in fact we needed to do that. We were kind of on a timeline, and we wanted to make sure that was done. And for me, it's really special because I get to see it on both sides. I get to vote on it from the council's perspective, and I get to vote on it here from the housing authority's perspective. And it's really, you know, this is becoming very, very important to me. It always was, but now it's really starting to come to life, and I'm excited about it. And every time we talk about it, every time we move one step forward, I get more excited about it because this is what our residents deserve, and I'm really, really happy with moving.
What, was it on the consent agenda?
It was. It literally went on consent. Not a question was asked.
Yeah.
Not a concern was raised. And that's just a testament to how well Director Brown and his staff did it, how well Director Echo and the staff here, and the collaboration amongst each other and getting this thing done. It went on without a hitch, and I can't thank everybody enough.
So on that note, as everything's been prepared and fully vetted, who is Bright View Engineering? How were they selected as?
That's the city's engineering.
I understand, that's the city's engineering.
Yeah.
And so they would handle all?
From the city's perspective.
From the city's perspective.
So I'll give you an example, and again, like I said earlier, it's all kind of commonplace for me, but when this process is happening, we're going to have our own engineers, our own planners, our own...
The housing authority has
right,
its engineer.
and they're going to say, this is what we think is possible. The city then has to kind of verify that, right? So in different types of scenarios, we have a lot of consultants pertaining to the funding of the project, right? Now, a little different because a lot of those other redevelopment projects are for-profit. Somebody's trying to maximize their profits, right? So they'll come in and they'll say, well, it's going to cost us this much to build. So we need more from you as a city. We want to engage in a pilot payment that's going to be X amount of dollars, right? We have to verify that as a city. So our professionals then look at that and go, wait a minute. You made some assumptions here about rents that just aren't true. And then we go through that with a fine-tooth comb. So we'll be doing that from the housing authority's perspective, but the city will also be doing that to say, hey, you missed this, or this is a different, we would have a different assumption on whatever, whether it's financing or planning or engineering or anything like that. So we'll have that back and forth, and that's part of not only the negotiation with the plan itself, right? Because the plan is the envelope of what we're talking about, but the agreement is when you get into the nitty gritty, right? I mean, some agreements, you can dictate the color of the brick, right? Now, the city has that option. We, as an authority, also have that option to say, no, in our agreement, we want X, Y, and Z. The city may come back and say, no, we want it a little different. That's where the negotiation starts. And that's how we kind of hash a lot of that stuff out. So you'll have professionals on both sides. So you'll have Brightview Engineering, but then we'll have an engineering firm here at the authority. We'll have a finance person at the city. We'll have it here at the authority. We'll have the lawyers. They'll have the lawyers.
So since we're the primary on this, why wouldn't the HHA be using their engineer?
We will be.
We will be. This is just saying that essentially,
this just dictates the city's side of it. For anything that you're reading in reference to what the city's doing, the city has to do that. We, as a city, still have to do our due diligence on the project.
Absolutely.
Right? So we have those firms in place. We have our engineering, we have our finance people, we have our lawyers. The housing authority will have the same counterpart in this conversation. So we'll have our own engineers, we'll have our own planners, we'll have our own finance people, our own legal team, right? So we'll have both sides of that. And each counterpart will collaborate and we'll come up with a
Will that be the
final
same too when we go to pick a developer and we have a understanding with the developer? We're gonna have our engineers, they're gonna have their engineers, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And then the city will have their engineers.
It just happens that this is the understanding with the city. Yeah. That's why. Okay.
Yeah, and like I said, I mean, it is, 18 years to really understand redevelopment agreements.
right,
So.
and, I mean, this entity was procured by the city of Hoboken, the contract was awarded by the city council, and in this sense, they will be performing the study on behalf of the city.
Yep.
Now, if there were some need as a result of that, which very often there is, for the housing authority to have its own study done by its own engineer, this board would have the power to do that.
Right. The reality is well, I shouldn't say we don't want to, but in some ways we don't want to have any of that burden, right? We want the city to designate, and then we want the city to pay for a plan with the consultation of the authority. So that doesn't have any monetary cost.
Right, and in a lot of instances, and I don't want to speak specifically for the city of Hoboken, in a situation like this, if you have a for-profit entity, I mean, you have the municipalities doing its own study, for-profit entities doing its own, and that developer, for-profit entity, they're paying for both of them. The city's saying, okay, now here's the bill for our engineer. My understanding is that's
the city's picking up the cost on our end. And
so if there were some issue, the housing authority would be free to obtain services of its own engineer.
And remember, it's all a negotiation at that point. When we really start talking about what the plan's going to look like, what the agreement's going to look like, it's all I'll give you the best example was 770 House. That was a year and about 8 months worth of negotiations before that plan was finalized. That's how long that redevelopment agreement took. That was a long time, and that changed drastically. The beginning of that redevelopment plan started with a building being built where the gym and park currently is. The developer acquired additional properties and handed that land over to the city in the form of a gym and a park. So that shifted greatly throughout those conversations. I don't foresee anything like that happening. In this situation, we own the land, there's no other issues. But yeah, those redevelopment conversations could last a long time.
Well, so maybe you'd be in the ideal position to help us understand, since you're on the city council and on this board. One of the expressed purposes when starting housing for Hoboken is the understanding that the land will be retained and owned by the housing authority. There's no way that any of these buildings and this land is sold or given away, that there's going to be a future for all the residents of the housing authority. So does that, can that be a part of the discussion, that would automatically preclude a developer if they were trying to?
We have that.
That happens here.
That happens.
But
Yeah,
don't
the
we
city has
have that?
nothing to do with that conversation.
Right, and
That happens
that
right
was,
here. The only
yeah.
way that a developer would retain any rights to any land is if this board votes to do the.
And that was
to do
part
that.
of.
And none of us have, we're all on record saying that that's not what we want to do.
Yeah, pardon me, Commissioner, and that was part of the discussion at, I believe it was last month's meeting with Shannon. The question was raised, can we put this into the RFQ that goes out on this? The answer is absolutely. If you want to require that the Housing Authority retains ownership, you can require that the Housing Authority retains ownership.
That's been our intention from the
Which I
beginning.
think
And again,
makes
that,
sense.
not giving anything away here, if you wanted to eventually cede some level of control, that would be up to this board to decide. Just at any point in this process, it would take 4 affirmative votes of this board.
Right. Well, and to that point, and to the other parts of this document that I was referring to, unfortunately, the city council can change as well. I don't want our housing authority, since we're all on the same page, we don't want the land given away or sold to anybody. I don't want to be in the position where a future city council, because I think you just said there was one negotiation that went on for like 9 years.
No.
Oh, 18 months, sorry. Well, a lot could happen.
Really killed myself.
So I just don't want us to be in a position where somebody else comes along and says, you got to do it this way or we're walking away.
Yeah.
And
It's
then
always
we're really
possible.
far
Yeah,
down
it
the
is.
road.
I mean, right, the reality is, it is always a possibility. Administrations change, council members change, that stuff happens constantly. But I think we're in a unique position and understanding of what the need is. And it would be very, very difficult for any future council or administration to change course. There might be tweaks here and there, right? But to completely change course, I think that would be very, very difficult. Virtually impossible, right? You know, I don't like to say that a lot because a lot of things happen in the world of government and politics. But that's a really, really heavy lift. And that's just my take on it.
I say this all respectfully, Commissioner, that I understand and I appreciate your concerns, and I think that it's clear that they're coming from the best place, but that concern would not at all be affected by this MOU. You're talking about something that is much further down the line in terms of redevelopment agreement, essentially.
Completely agree, completely understand.
Just making sure.
I just want to, but from my perspective, I want to start from the beginning with this understanding. I really do not want somebody coming down the road telling us how we're going to redevelop this housing authority.
Sure.
And James, we appreciate that because, I mean, the questions that you're asking are helping me a lot.
Yeah.
This is all new to me, so.
And when we retain, as an authority, when we retain our redevelopment council, right, which is very specialized, they will really shine a light on the process, how we do it, what the pitfalls may be, because there's going to be, right, the city, the housing authority, and potentially even the development partner at some point, there will be moments where there's a conflict, right? It's just a guarantee. So once we retain that council, once we retain those professionals, you're going to see a whole different kind of perspective. They will lay that out for us, and we'll all have a better understanding.
So one kind of final question in this vein here. So section E, development, the redevelopment plan, middle of the text, the city and HHA will collaborate with regard to the retention of any qualified planning consultants to provide redevelopment planning and various other base expertises. Can you help me to understand what a qualified planning consultant?
Yeah, it would just be a professional that is specific to how that plan would finalize, right? So again, the stages of a redevelopment is what the city is now going to embark on, which is designated the area. So there are certain criteria that you have to meet. So then an area specific to the housing authority in this case have to meet those criteria. We know they meet the criteria. The obsolescence of the buildings alone is enough for it to become area of redevelopment. The sewer system alone is enough for it to be an area of redevelopment. Combine the two, it's locked in, right? So we kind of know that it's going to happen because we know of the severity of it. So once that's done, you now have a designation of the area. From that point, the city then has to do a redevelopment plan. And again, the plan is the envelope of what the city will allow. It's almost like setting the zoning for that area. So, for example, if the city plan calls for 2 stories, let's make it ridiculous so we don't put any false information out there. Calls for 2 stories across the board, that's all you could build. That's the envelope that we could build in. Then, after that's approved by the city, then you start with a redevelopment agreement and that negotiation. Within that agreement, you will build what the city and the housing authority collaborate on within the envelope that's already been set by the plan. So in this scenario, 2 stories. Well, we want 1 story of senior housing, we want 1 story of family housing. The city comes back and says, well, from the city's perspective, we don't have a problem with that, but on the corners of the block, we want a corner store, we want a retail facility here. Then that becomes part of the negotiation. Once that's finalized, that redevelopment is put on paper, the agreement, the city votes on it, the board votes on it, and the redevelopment partner at that point begins to build. They begin to build that redevelopment.
So the qualified planning consultant, if it's a collaborative effort, does the city and the housing authority jointly choose that consultant, or can the housing authority choose it?
In this agreement, it's saying we, the authority, is going to have more sway because we're going to collaborate with the city for their planner or their planning consultant, as it's termed here. Right? So we're going to have more say than let's say a different redevelopment or a redeveloper may have. So there are other things that are spelled out, and this could change as Matt said.
So if we have more say, does that mean we have to pay more? Or
no, because the city's picking up a lot of the costs, which is good.
Essentially, you're going to work together to agree on these professionals. Now, I mean, if the city said, absolutely not, you're using this firm, or we're not doing it, the city has the right to walk away, just like the housing authority has the right to walk away. But essentially, this is the 2 parties committing to working together. And while I don't think it's not a concern at all, I think in this situation, the city and the housing authority are much more on the same page than you would find in a typical redevelopment situation where you're talking about a private entity. That doesn't mean everybody's going to agree on everything and that you don't need to cover your bases and you're not asking a valid question. But I think you're going to find, maybe Commissioner Russo, knock on wood, will find that this one moves a little bit more smoothly than what he's used to.
I think we're in a good position.
But essentially, this is saying, hey, we both have a say in this decision. We're going to make this decision.
And quite honestly, I've gotten, I've had conversations with literally all my council colleagues and the mayor and the administration, and I literally haven't heard any concerns to this point. Everyone wants to move this forward. Everyone has seen what our repositioning plan looks like, right? So there are no surprises here. Everyone understands what we're really trying to achieve, and there's been no concerns from the city's perspective, and I'm hopeful and pray that it stays that way.
And the housing authority, by owning the land, is worth 25, 30% of the finished product.
We're in the catbird seat then.
We absolutely are.
Any more questions? Director?
Good discussion.
Anthony Forbes, Andrew Impastato.
Yes.
Aaron Lewitt.
Yes.
Barbara Reyes.
Yes.
Michael Russo.
Absolutely, yes.
Jane Sanford.
No.
Erica Seitzman.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And before
Yes.
we close, we did it. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you to all those that have been involved.
Shovels in the ground tomorrow.
Right.
What?
That was the next step.
You're playing the role of him tonight.
I just want to say before we leave that I am very proud to say that our basketball league ended this past weekend, this past Saturday, and Hoboken won. So our group, Andrew, you probably know it, Tyshawn's team.
Hansberry, yeah.
Yeah, Tyshawn Hanberry's crew won. They were very happy. It was nice talking to the officers on site because, as you know, they were on site the entire season. And it was nice to hear from an officer to say this was a really nice thing. It went well. There was no issues. You know, this was something really good. And that makes me proud that we, as a board, were able, you know, to put this together for the kids. Again, we didn't stop everything that was going on, but it helped those few weeks. I want to say almost 2 months that we had this league. It was very, very helpful. With that being said, I have asked the director. I know that the GoFundMe page that we created did go to pay for the scoreboard, for the scorekeepers, for the referees, which were all the young children, I don't want to say young children, the young men from our community who did it, and it was nice for us to be able to give them something for doing this. But I did ask him if we had leftover, if we could possibly get some trophies for these 5 young kids, young men. I think it's only fair. I don't know how you guys feel. We can discuss it later. I don't know how much is left over, if any is left over, because I did see the bills and you know, there was quite a few. But if not, I have no problems asking, you know, our resources or my resources to see if everyone can chip in so that we can get these young men some.
I'd be happy to donate a trophy for that from our nonprofit. So if that's, you know, if there's no money there, I'll for sure work with Stans or whoever's got it.
We'll do an accounting on it now that we've got this through, and then we'll be back to everyone over the next week or so.
Yeah, just let me know.
And then maybe at the next board meeting, if we can work it out.
Now, Director, I think by the end of, by our next board meeting, are we going to have our obsolescence study completed?
We will have the obsolescence study selection to you to choose the firm that's going to do the obsolescence study. Right? So we have to choose the firm that's going to do the obsolescence study.
Easiest job there is.
Because the RFP is out.
The buildings need to come out.
Stick your finger in the wall.
Yes, absolutely.
The obsolescence study will be in the paper on Monday.
Right.
And it's due back on October 4th.
Right.
So we'll have it at the next
meeting. And then
meeting.
we'll have a subcommittee meeting to evaluate those. And we're planning on, by the way, for that committee, I'm planning on having that meeting on the 6th of October.
Okay.
At 7 o'clock for that subcommittee.
What subcommittee is that?
And that subcommittee is the Professional Procurement Committee with Reyes, Russo, and Seitzman.
When is the 6th?
6th, you said?
Let me recheck. It would be the day before.
Thursday is the 6th.
Yes. Calendar, October 6th.
Wait, Yom Kippur. Can't do it then.
Okay. So the board meeting isn't until the 13th, so we could do it the 4th. No, can't do it on the 4th because that's when we get it back. The 10th, 11th, or 12th.
Oh, wait, no, the 6th might be okay. The 5th is.
Yeah, the Yom Kippur is the 5th, right?
Yeah, sorry.
Or someone else could step in.
Not that I should tell you that.
I get my confused.
The 4th, the
4th and 5th.
back
Other
at
days
1
I can't do.
o'clock, so we could do it any time after that. Like, I would just have to.
The 6th is okay.
grab them together.
6th is okay?
Yeah.
6th is okay.
All right, so let's leave it at the 6th then.
Look at the 6th at 7 o'clock p.m.
That's good.
And then, just on a side note, right now, I saw there was a tally of 7 referees, so if we're doing trophies, we need to decide.
No, then we'll just, stay out of this one.
No, referees,
We're not talking about referees.
no.
For the winners.
It's the winning team.
It's the winner.
5 kids, yeah.
Yeah, and
No problem.
not their accountant.
No, and so with that being said, before we close, I just want to give a big shout out and a thank you to the young man, Mr. Mike Singleton, who put it together, ran it, and it was a success. It was definitely a learning experience from us. And we hope next year to have a more successful league and that we can continue to do this for the youth in our community from that age group because it's needed. So, motion to close?
Motion.
Second.
Second.
Whatever.
Good meeting, everybody. Another step forward.
Big step.